Eira Voss spent 7 years hiding the one secret that could destroy every wolf pack in the north, until the most feared alpha alive looked into her eyes and realized she was lying about who she was. For 7 years, she has lived as a ghost, running from a secret powerful enough to shatter every werewolf pack in the north. She trusts no one, stays nowhere for long, and never reveals the strange silver mark hidden on her wrist. But when a brutal winter storm drives her into the territory of Iron Vale, she is captured by the feared Alpha Rowan Thorne, a leader burdened by a deadly curse threatening to destroy his pack from within. As ancient secrets begin to surface and enemies gather in the shadows, Eira and Rowan are forced into a dangerous alliance. What begins with suspicion and mistrust slowly grows into something neither of them expected. Yet the closer they become, the more dangerous the truth becomes. Chapter 1. The Stranger in the Snow. The wind screamed through the mountains like a living thing. Eira Voss lowered her head against the storm and forced herself forward through the deep snow. Each step felt heavier than the last. Ice clung to her dark hair. Her boots were soaked. Her fingers were numb despite the worn leather gloves protecting them. The storm had arrived faster than expected. 3 days ago, she had been traveling south through the borderlands. Now she was trapped in a wilderness buried beneath snow and darkness. Most people would have stopped. Eira couldn't. Stopping meant dying, or worse, being found. The thought sent a familiar knot of anxiety through her stomach. For 7 years she had survived by staying invisible. Never stay too long. Never trust anyone. Never tell the truth. The rules had kept her alive. She intended to keep following them. A sharp pain pulsed beneath her ribs. She winced. The old wound had never healed properly. The freezing weather only made it worse. She paused beside a snow-covered pine tree and caught her breath. Silence surrounded her. At first. Then she smelled them. Wolf. Not ordinary wolves, werewolves, pack wolves. Her muscles instantly tightened. No, please, not now. She closed her eyes briefly and focused on the scents carried by the wind. Several wolves, organized, patrolling, territorial, a pack, and not just any pack, a powerful one. The realization hit seconds later. Iron Vale. She had crossed into Iron Vale territory. Her heart sank. Stories about Iron Vale traveled across the north, strong warriors, strict laws, an alpha feared by allies and enemies alike. If they discovered who she truly was, everything would fall apart. Eira immediately changed direction. The scents shifted, following her. They had already noticed. She cursed under her breath and broke into a run. Snow exploded beneath her boots. Branches scratched her face as she pushed through the forest. The storm made visibility almost impossible. She could barely see 10 feet ahead. Yet she could hear them, closing in. Fast, professional hunters. They weren't chasing blindly. They were herding her. A growl sounded somewhere to her right. Another answered from ahead, then one behind. Surrounded. Eira skidded to a stop. Her chest rose and fell rapidly. White breath filled the freezing air. 4 massive wolves emerged from the storm. Gray, black, silent. Golden eyes watched her carefully. The largest stepped forward. Scars covered its muzzle. A beta. The wolf shifted. Bones cracked. Muscles twisted. Fur disappeared. Moments later, a man stood where the wolf had been. Tall, broad-shouldered, armed. His expression wasn't friendly. "Who are you?" he demanded. Eira remained still. The man waited. Snow drifted between them. "Name? Eira. Pack? No pack." The answer immediately drew suspicious looks from the others. The beta folded his arms. "No pack," he repeated. "That's right." His eyes narrowed. Every wolf belonged somewhere. At least that's what most packs believed. A lone wolf was either dangerous or lying, sometimes both. "What are you doing in Iron Vale territory?" he asked, trying not to freeze to death. A few scouts exchanged glances. The beta didn't smile. "You crossed 3 border markers." "I didn't see them." "You smelled them." Eira said nothing. The man's suspicion deepened. He stepped closer. "What are you hiding?" A dangerous question, one she couldn't answer. Fortunately, she didn't have to. A new scent suddenly filled the air. Power, authority, Alpha. Every scout immediately straightened. The forest itself seemed to become still. Eira felt the presence before she saw him. A ripple of instinct moved through her body. Wolf recognized wolf. Predator recognized predator. Then he appeared. A tall figure emerged from the swirling snow. Dark coat, dark hair, ice blue eyes. The storm seemed to bend around him. Eira had heard stories about Rowan Thorne. None of them had prepared her for reality. He wasn't merely intimidating, he was overwhelming. The kind of alpha whose presence filled every space he entered. The scouts lowered their heads respectfully. The beta stepped aside. Rowan's attention settled entirely on Eira. For several seconds, neither spoke. His gaze moved carefully across her face, studying, measuring, evaluating. She fought the urge to look away. Looking weak around an alpha was dangerous. Looking afraid was worse. Finally, Rowan spoke. "You crossed into my territory during a storm." His voice was calm, controlled, dangerous. "I wasn't aware I needed permission to survive." One scout looked shocked by her response. The beta muttered something under his breath. Rowan simply continued watching her. To her surprise, amusement briefly flickered in his eyes. Only briefly. Then it vanished. "You don't smell like a rogue." Eira remained silent. "You don't smell like any pack I've met." Still silent. His gaze sharpened. "Which means you're hiding something." A familiar chill ran through her. Because he was right. She was hiding everything. The alpha stepped forward. Snow crunched beneath his boots. Eira instinctively moved back. Only half a step. But he noticed. Of course he noticed. Nothing seemed to escape him. His eyes drifted downward, toward her hands, toward the edge of her glove, toward the silver mark barely visible beneath the fabric. Everything inside her froze. No, the glove had slipped. Only slightly, but enough. Rowan's expression changed. The shift was subtle, yet unmistakable. Recognition. The alpha stared at the mark, then at her. A strange silence settled over the forest. The beta noticed. "So you know her?" he asked. Rowan ignored him. His eyes never left Eira. "Where did you get that mark?" The question struck like lightning. Fear surged through her chest. Not because he had seen it, because he understood it. That wasn't possible. Almost nobody knew what the symbol represented, and everyone who did, everyone who should have known, was dead. Eira slowly pulled her glove lower, covering the mark. Too late. Rowan had already seen it. His jaw tightened. "Answer me." She forced herself to remain calm. "I don't know what you're talking about." The lie sounded weak, even to her own ears. Rowan took another step forward. The air between them felt charged, dangerously charged. The scouts exchanged uncertain looks. Something important was happening. Something they didn't understand. Neither did Eira. Not completely, but she knew enough. If Rowan recognized that symbol, then someone had hidden the truth from both of them. Someone powerful, someone dangerous. The storm howled through the trees. Snow swirled around them. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Rowan spoke again. His voice was quieter this time, more unsettling. What are you? The question struck deeper than any blade, because Eira wasn't entirely sure anymore. She had spent years running from the answer, years pretending she was ordinary, years ignoring the truth buried inside her blood. But now the most feared Alpha in the north was staring directly at her, and judging by the look in his eyes, he already knew she wasn't what she claimed to be. The realization sent a cold wave through her, not from the storm, from fear. Real fear, the kind she hadn't felt in years, because if Rowan Thorne knew the meaning of her mark, then the past she had spent 7 years escaping had finally caught up with her, and this time, there might be nowhere left to run. Chapter 2. Prisoner of the Alpha. The journey to Iron Vale took nearly 2 hours. Neither Eira nor Rowan spoke. The storm continued to rage around them, reducing the world to snow, wind, and shadow. The scouts surrounded her from every side. Not close enough to provoke, close enough to stop and escape. Eira noticed every detail, the discipline, the formation, the silent communication between wolves. Iron Vale was not like the smaller packs she had encountered over the years. These wolves were trained, prepared, dangerous, most of all, loyal. That worried her. Loyal wolves followed orders without hesitation, and if Rowan Thorne decided she was a threat, no one would question him. The thought lingered in her mind as the forest gradually opened. Then she saw Iron Vale. The settlement sat within a natural basin surrounded by steep mountain walls. Stone buildings rose from the snow-covered valley floor. Smoke curled from chimneys. Lanterns glowed warmly against the darkness. Watchtowers stood along the ridges. Guards patrolled the perimeter. The entire settlement felt less like a village and more like a fortress, built to survive war, or perhaps expecting one. As they entered through the massive wooden gates, conversation stopped. Eyes followed her immediately. Pack members emerged from homes and workshops. Children peeked from doorways. Warriors watched openly. Eira ignored them. She had learned long ago that attention could be survived. Fear could not. The beta walked beside her. "I'm Gideon Ash." She glanced at him. He didn't seem particularly interested in friendship. "I didn't ask." A corner of his mouth twitched. "You're going to fit in terribly here." "I don't plan on fitting in." "Good." His expression hardened again. "Because nobody trusts you." That made 2 of them. At the center of the settlement stood the largest building Eira had ever seen inside a packed territory. A great hall built from stone and dark timber. Its roof stretched high above the surrounding structures. Iron wolf symbols decorated the entrance. Power radiated from the place. Political power, pack power, alpha power. Rowan climbed the steps first. Without looking back, he said, "Bring her inside." The doors opened. Warmth hit Eira immediately. The interior smelled of cedar wood, smoke, and wolves. Long tables filled the hall. Large maps covered the walls. Weapons rested on carved racks. This wasn't merely Rowan's home. It was the heart of Iron Vale. Gideon motioned toward a chair. "Sit." Eira remained standing. "No." The beta sighed. "You're going to make everything difficult, aren't you?" "Probably." For the first time, Gideon almost smiled. Then Rowan turned. The amusement vanished instantly. The Alpha sat at the far end of a long table, his blue eyes fixed on her. "Sit." Unlike Gideon, Rowan didn't repeat himself. Eira slowly lowered herself into the chair. The room fell silent. Several senior pack members had gathered. A gray-haired woman wearing healer's robes, a young scholar carrying scrolls, 2 warriors, an older man with sharp eyes. Everyone watched, waiting, judging. Rowan folded his hands. Let's start again. Eira said nothing. What pack were you born into? No pack. That's not what I asked. The correction irritated her. She hated people who noticed details, especially alphas. Why do you care? Because strangers don't wander into Iron Vale during blizzards carrying forbidden symbols. The room immediately reacted. Forbidden symbols. So they knew, at least partially. Eira's pulse quickened. The healer exchanged a glance with Rowan. The scholar looked alarmed. Gideon's posture stiffened. Interesting. Very interesting. Nobody seemed surprised, only concerned, which meant Rowan wasn't the only person familiar with the mark. The realization sent unease through her stomach. The healer finally spoke. I'm Mara Kestrel. Her voice was calm, gentle. We're not trying to hurt you. Eira nearly laughed. People always said that before causing pain. Mara continued. If Rowan recognized the mark, then you're connected to something important. I'm connected to survival. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. Silence followed. The Alpha leaned back slightly, studying her, waiting. Patience was often more dangerous than anger. Eventually Rowan stood. Fine. Gideon frowned. You're letting her keep secrets. For now. The beta looked unconvinced. So did everyone else. Except Mara. The healer seemed strangely thoughtful, as if she had already reached a conclusion. Rowan approached, close enough that Eira could see the faint scar crossing his jaw, close enough to notice exhaustion hidden beneath his calm exterior. Something weighed on him, something heavy. You're not a prisoner, Rowan said. Eira raised an eyebrow. The surrounding guard suggested otherwise. You'll stay in the guest quarters. Until when? Until I decide whether you're a threat. There it was. The truth. At least part of it. She stood. So I am a prisoner. His gaze met hers. For several seconds neither looked away. Then Rowan said quietly, That depends on what you're hiding. The guest quarters were larger than many homes Eira had lived in. A fire burned in the hearth. Fresh blankets covered the bed. Food waited on a nearby table. The hospitality felt suspicious, perhaps because she had forgotten what kindness looked like. After ensuring she wasn't locked inside, Gideon left. Eira waited. 5 minutes, 10, 15. Then she moved. The room contained one window, one door, no visible guards. Interesting. She approached the window. The settlement stretched below. Pack members moved through the snow. Lantern light reflected off white rooftops. Everything seemed peaceful. Yet something felt wrong. A sensation she couldn't explain, like a storm hidden beneath still water. A knock interrupted her thoughts. Before she could answer, the door opened. Mara entered carrying a tray. Soup, tea, medicine. Eira immediately distrusted her. The healer smiled faintly. You look disappointed. I was hoping for fewer visitors. Unfortunately, you're interesting. Mara set the tray down. The older woman studied her carefully. Not aggressively, almost sadly. That bothered Eira more than suspicion. How old are you? Mara asked. 24. The healer nodded. That fits. Fits what? Mara ignored the question. Instead, she picked up Eira's wrist. Before Eira could pull away, the healer gently rolled back the glove. The silver mark appeared. A crescent shape surrounded by strange lines. Ancient, beautiful, terrifying. Mara stared at it. A flicker of emotion crossed her face. Recognition, fear, grief. Then she released Eira. Impossible, she whispered. What is? The healer looked directly into her eyes. When did it appear? Eira hesitated. 7 years ago. Mara's face lost color. 7? The woman immediately stood. I need to speak with Rowan. About what? Mara moved toward the door. Pray that I'm wrong. Then she left, leaving Eira with far more questions than answers. Night settled across Iron Vale. Sleep refused to come. The wind battered the walls. The fire crackled softly. Hours passed. Then a scream shattered the darkness. Eira sat upright instantly. Another scream followed, closer, terrified, pain-filled. Wolf. Without thinking, she grabbed her coat and rushed outside. Pack members were already running. Warriors shifted mid-stride. Chaos spread through the settlement. Eira followed the crowd toward the eastern gate. The scent hit her first. Blood. Fresh blood. Lots of it. Then she saw the victim. A young wolf lay on the ground surrounded by healers. His body convulsed violently. Black veins spread beneath his skin. Foam dripped from his mouth. His eyes glowed an unnatural crimson. What happened? Eira asked. Nobody answered. Mara knelt beside the victim. Fear filled her expression. The same fear Eira had seen earlier. The wolf suddenly arched upward. A horrifying growl escaped his throat. Then he spoke. Except the voice didn't sound entirely human, or entirely wolf. It sounded like something broken, something corrupted. The crowd stepped back. Even Rowan. The possessed wolf's gaze swept across the gathered pack, searching, hunting. Then his eyes landed on Eira. Everything stopped. The wolf stared directly at her. Recognition flashed across his twisted face. No, he whispered. The voice sounded wrong. Ancient, cracked, terrifying. Mara froze. Rowan's posture tightened. The wolf pointed a shaking finger toward Eira. Then he smiled, a smile filled with madness. The air. Silence crashed over the crowd. Eira's blood turned cold. The air. No one had called her that in 7 years. No one alive should know that word. The wolf's smile widened. The air has returned. Then he screamed. A burst of dark energy exploded outward. The lanterns shattered. The ground trembled. And before anyone could stop him, the wolf died. The silence afterward felt unbearable. Every eye in Iron Vale slowly turned toward Eira. Rowan's included. No longer suspicious, certain. And for the first time since arriving, Eira realized she might be in far more danger inside Iron Vale than she had ever been outside it. Chapter 3. Cracks in the Ice. The silence after the wolf's death felt endless. Snow drifted through the lantern-lit settlement while dozens of eyes remained fixed on Eira. No one spoke, no one moved. The dead wolf lay motionless in the snow, his body already beginning to cool. The air. Those two words echoed through Eira's mind. 7 years. 7 years since she had last heard that title. 7 years since the night her world burned. A cold knot formed in her stomach. Someone knew. Somehow, someone knew. Rowan stepped forward. The crowd immediately parted for him. His expression revealed almost nothing. Almost. But Eira saw the tension in his jaw, the questions behind his eyes, the growing suspicion. What did he mean? Rowan asked. Eira forced herself to remain calm. I don't know. A lie. A dangerous one. The Alpha knew it. The crowd knew it. Worst of all, she knew it. Gideon folded his arms. You expect us to believe that? I don't care what you believe. The beta took a step toward her. Rowan raised a hand. Gideon stopped instantly. The Alpha's gaze never left Eira. Come with me. It wasn't a request. The Alpha's office occupied the upper floor of the great hall. Large windows overlooked the valley. Maps covered nearly every wall. Books and records filled towering shelves. A massive stone fireplace burned near the center of the room. Rowan closed the door behind them. For several moments, neither spoke. Eira stood near the window. Rowan remained beside his desk. The distance between them felt deliberate, careful, measured. Finally, Rowan broke the silence. "That wolf wasn't sick." Eira glanced at him. "What?" "He wasn't suffering from madness." His voice remained calm. "He was possessed." The statement surprised her. Most alphas would have dismissed such an idea. Not Rowan. He sounded certain, as if he had seen it before. Eira crossed her arms. "And that means? It means something is happening in my territory." His eyes hardened. Something ancient. A chill moved through her. Ancient. The word carried uncomfortable implications. Words from old stories, old bloodlines, old secrets, things she spent years avoiding. Rowan continued. "And somehow you're connected." Eira laughed bitterly. "Everyone seems determined to connect me to things lately. Maybe because you refuse to tell the truth." That struck harder than expected. Not because it was cruel, because it was accurate. The Alpha studied her. His gaze seemed capable of stripping away every defense she had built. "What are you afraid of?" he asked quietly. The question caught her off guard. She expected accusations, threats, interrogations, not concern. Concern was dangerous. It made people lower their guard. Eira looked away. "I don't fear much anymore." A pause, then Rowan said, "That's not an answer either." Neither spoke for several seconds. Finally, Eira sighed. "You want the truth?" "Yes. I don't know what the title means anymore." His expression shifted. Slightly. Enough to tell her he hadn't expected that answer. "I was called the Heir when I was younger." The confession felt strange, like opening a locked door. "A few people believed I was connected to something important." "What happened?" Her throat tightened. Memories surfaced. Fire, blood, screams, smoke. The destruction of everything she loved. They died. The room fell silent. Rowan didn't push, didn't demand more. For some reason that made her trust him a little. Only a little. The Alpha nodded slowly. Then someone pounded on the door. 3 rapid knocks. Urgent. Gideon entered before Rowan could answer. His expression looked grim. "We found another one." Rowan straightened immediately. "Alive?" "Barely." The Alpha grabbed his coat. "Eastern Watchtower." Gideon glanced toward Eira. "We should leave her here." "No." Rowan's answer came instantly. The Beta frowned. "You trust her?" "No." The Alpha moved toward the door. "But I want her where I can see her." The Eastern Watchtower stood near the edge of Iron Vale territory. The storm had weakened overnight. Gray morning light spread across the mountains. Snow crunched beneath their boots as they approached. Several guards waited outside. Their faces revealed fear. Real fear. The kind warriors hated showing. Rowan immediately noticed. "What happened?" One guard swallowed. "He started talking." The Alpha's expression darkened. Inside the tower, another injured wolf lay strapped to a bed. His body shook violently. Black veins spread beneath pale skin, exactly like the first victim. Mara stood nearby. The healer looked exhausted. She glanced at Rowan. "It's getting worse." The wolf suddenly opened his eyes. Bright crimson. Unnatural. The room froze. The possessed wolf slowly turned his head toward Eira. Again. Always toward her. His cracked lips parted. "The blood remembers." A shiver passed through the room. "What blood?" Gideon demanded. The wolf ignored him. "The gate opens." Mara exchanged a worried look with Rowan. The possessed wolf continued speaking, words that sounded more like prophecy than conversation. "The forgotten line returns." Then his eyes rolled backward. His body convulsed. And suddenly, everything stopped. The crimson glow vanished. The black veins disappeared. The wolf collapsed unconscious, alive, but normal. The room remained silent. Nobody understood what had happened, except perhaps Mara. The healer looked increasingly alarmed. Later that afternoon, Rowan called a meeting. Senior members gathered in the great hall. Eira sat near the back, observing, listening, learning. The discussion quickly turned ugly. This outsider arrived and suddenly people start dying, one warrior argued. Coincidence? Another asked. No. Gideon looked toward Eira. We don't know enough. Rowan remained seated at the head of the table, silent, thinking. A dangerous silence. Finally, Eira Vale spoke. The young historian adjusted her glasses. I found something. Every eye turned toward her. The scholar placed several ancient documents on the table. The symptoms match records from over 200 years ago. Rowan leaned forward. What records? Lyra hesitated. The Nightfall Plague. The room instantly grew tense. Even Eira noticed the reaction. Whatever the plague had been, people remembered it. The victims experienced visions, Lyra explained. Possession-like behavior. Strange prophecies. Mara looked uneasy. And? Lyra swallowed. The outbreak ended when an entire bloodline disappeared. Eira's pulse quickened. No. She already knew where this conversation was heading. The scholar looked directly at her. The Moonfire line. Silence exploded across the room. Even Gideon seemed stunned. Rowan's eyes narrowed. The same bloodline connected to her mark? Lyra nodded slowly. Yes. Eira felt trapped. The walls suddenly seemed too close. The room too small. The air too thin. Because she recognized that name. Moonfire. A name whispered throughout her childhood. A name she had buried. A name she had spent 7 years pretending not to remember. The Moonfire line. Her family's line. That evening, Eira stood alone outside the settlement. The sky had finally cleared. Stars filled the darkness. For the first time in days, the world felt quiet. At least until Rowan appeared. She heard him approaching before she saw him. The Alpha stopped beside her. Neither spoke immediately. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, just cautious. Eventually, Rowan looked toward the mountains. You knew that name? It wasn't a question. Eira sighed. Yes, the Moonfire line. Yes. He waited, giving her a chance to explain. A chance she wasn't ready to take. After a moment, Rowan nodded. I figured. To her surprise, he didn't press further. Instead, he looked toward the distant tree line. Something caught his attention. His expression changed instantly. Danger, alertness, instinct. Eira followed his gaze. At first, she saw nothing. Then movement. A figure, standing among the trees, watching them. Too far away to identify, too still to be accidental, a spy, or worse. The figure raised a hand, then disappeared into the darkness. Rowan immediately moved. Eira, stay here. Naturally, she ignored him. Together they ran toward the forest. Snow sprayed beneath their boots. Branches whipped past. The figure vanished deeper into the woods. Rowan shifted first. Bones cracked. A massive black wolf burst forward. Eira followed without thinking. Her own transformation happened faster, cleaner, instinctive. Silver-gray fur replaced skin. The cold disappeared. The sense intensified. For several minutes they chased the intruder. Then Rowan stopped suddenly. Eira nearly collided with him. The Alpha stared at the ground. A small object rested in the snow. Someone had left it deliberately. A message. Rowan shifted back. Eira did the same. He picked up the item. A carved bone pendant. Ancient symbols covered its surface. The Alpha's face hardened. What is it? Rowan looked at her. For the first time since they met, genuine concern appeared in his eyes. This isn't a warning. Eira frowned. Then what is it? His voice lowered. It's proof. Proof of what? Rowan turned the pendant over. A familiar silver crescent symbol was carved into the back, exactly like the mark on Eira's wrist. And beneath it was a single sentence. She is not the only one. Chapter 4. The Blood Beneath the Ashes. The words carved into the pendant haunted Eira all night. She is not the only one. The message should have been impossible. For 7 years, she had believed she was the last survivor, the last carrier, the last moonfire. That belief had shaped every decision she made, every mile she traveled, every lie she told. Now a stranger had shattered it with a single sentence. Sleep never came. By dawn, Eira stood outside the guest quarters watching pale sunlight spill across the mountains. The settlement was already awake. Smoke rose from chimneys. Workers moved between buildings. Children laughed somewhere in the distance. Normal life. Yet beneath the surface, fear lingered. 3 wolves had fallen ill within 48 hours. No one understood why. No one understood how. And somehow Eira stood at the center of it all. The irony wasn't lost on her. She had spent years running from attention. Now she couldn't escape it. Footsteps approached. Rowan. She recognized his scent before she turned. The Alpha stopped beside her. Dark circles lingered beneath his eyes. He looked tired, more tired than he allowed anyone else to see. You didn't sleep. Neither of them phrased it as a question. Eira shrugged. You either. A corner of his mouth twitched, the closest thing to a smile she'd seen from him. Then it disappeared. We need to talk. The seriousness in his voice immediately erased any warmth. Eira nodded. About the pendant, and your family. The word struck harder than expected. Family. She hated that word. Not because she didn't love them, because she did, and they were gone. The meeting took place inside a small chamber beneath the great hall. Unlike the council room, this one felt ancient, older. The stone walls bore carvings worn smooth by centuries. Moon symbols, wolf symbols, unknown symbols. History surrounded them. Only 4 people were present. Rowan, Mara, Lyra, Eira. The moment the door closed, Lyra placed several old books onto the table. The scholar looked unusually nervous. Her hands trembled slightly. I spent the entire night searching the archives. Eira sat carefully. What did you find? Lyra exchanged a glance with Mara. Then she opened the oldest book. The pages appeared fragile, ancient. The Moonfire line wasn't a pack. Eira frowned. What? It was a bloodline. The room grew quiet. Lyra continued. Long before modern packs existed, certain wolves carried unusual gifts. Gifts? Eira asked. The historian nodded. They could sense supernatural corruption. The words immediately caught Rowan's attention. The sickness. Possibly. Lyra flipped another page. The Moonfire wolves acted as guardians. Guardians of what? Rowan asked. The scholar hesitated. Then she answered quietly. A doorway. Silence followed. Eira stared. A doorway? Mara finally spoke. Not a physical door. Her expression looked troubled. A spiritual one. Eira hated where this conversation was heading. Ancient prophecies, spiritual gateways, forgotten bloodlines, the ingredients of every nightmare she'd spent years avoiding. Rowan leaned forward. What happened to them? Lyra swallowed. They disappeared. How? Another hesitation. Then, according to official records, they were killed. Eira's stomach tightened. Official records? Not truth. Records. Two very different things. She knew enough history to understand that. So they were hunted. Lyra nodded reluctantly. Yes. The room remained silent. Eira stared at the old pages. Suddenly, pieces of her childhood returned. Conversations whispered behind closed doors. Fear hidden beneath her mother's smile. The way her father always checked the windows at night. The constant movement, the secrecy, the running. Her parents had known long before the attack, known they were being hunted. A sharp ache settled in her chest. 7 years later, and the grief remained. Raw, unfinished. That afternoon, Rowan insisted on showing her something. Eira followed him through the settlement and into the mountains beyond. Neither spoke much. The trail climbed steadily upward. Snow crunched beneath their boots. The air grew colder, higher, wilder. After nearly an hour, they reached a cliff overlooking the valley. The view stole her breath. Iron Vale stretched below like a painting. Tiny rooftops, frozen rivers, endless forests. For the first time, she understood why Rowan fought so hard for this place. It wasn't merely territory. It was home. The Alpha walked toward a large stone partially buried in snow. Ancient markings covered its surface. Eira immediately recognized the symbol. A crescent surrounded by flame-like lines. Her symbol. The moon-fire symbol. Her pulse accelerated. Why is that here? Rowan's expression darkened. That's what I want to know. He brushed snow from the stone. More carvings emerged. Words. Ancient wolf script. Eira stared, then frowned. I can read that. Rowan looked surprised. You can? She nodded slowly. The realization unsettled her. She had never seen this language before. Yet somehow the symbols felt familiar, instinctive, natural, as though buried somewhere deep within her memory. Eira stepped closer. The carvings almost seemed to glow beneath her fingertips. Then she began translating. When darkness rises from the forgotten gate. The wind suddenly died. The world became strangely still. Eira continued. The blood of moon fire shall awaken. A strange warmth spread through her palm. The stone vibrated. Rowan noticed immediately. Eira! She ignored him. The words pulled her forward, compelled her. The last heir shall carry both the key and the burden. The ground trembled. Both of them stepped back. Snow cascaded from nearby rocks. The mountain groaned. Then the stone cracked, straight down the middle. A brilliant silver light erupted from within. Eira stumbled backward. The light lasted only seconds, then vanished, leaving silence, absolute silence. Neither moved, neither spoke. Finally, Rowan approached the broken stone. Inside rested something wrapped in ancient cloth. Carefully he lifted it. A journal. Old. Extremely old. The cover bore the same moonfire symbol. Eira's hands shook. She already knew who it belonged to. Somehow, she knew. Rowan opened the first page. A name stared back at them. Aurelia Moonfire. Eira's mother. The journal slipped from Rowan's hands. For several seconds, neither breathed. Because Eira's mother had died 7 years ago. Or so she had always believed. A folded letter fell from the journal. Rowan picked it up. The paper was remarkably preserved. The writing inside was addressed to only one person. To Eira. With trembling fingers, she unfolded it. The first line shattered everything she thought she knew. If you are reading this, then they lied to you about my death. The mountain seemed to tilt beneath her feet. The world narrowed. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. She read the sentence again and again, unable to believe it, unable to breathe, unable to think, because if her mother hadn't died, then someone had staged her death, someone had lied, Someone had hidden the truth for 7 years. And suddenly, Eira realized something terrifying. The attack that destroyed her family might never have been an attack at all. It might have been a disappearance, a carefully planned one. And somewhere out there, her mother might still be alive. Chapter 5. The Journal of Secrets. For a long moment, neither Eira nor Rowan spoke. The mountain wind swept across the cliff, tugging at their coats, but Eira barely felt it. Her entire world had narrowed to the letter trembling in her hands. If you are reading this, then they lied to you about my death. 7 years. 7 years of grief. 7 years of guilt. 7 years spent believing she had failed to save her family. And now, everything was uncertain. Eira. Rowan's voice seemed distant. She blinked. The Alpha was watching her carefully, not as a suspect, not as a mystery, as someone standing on the edge of collapse. Sit down. Normally she would have argued. This time she didn't. Her legs felt weak. She lowered herself onto a nearby stone. The letter crinkled in her grasp. Slowly, she forced herself to continue reading. The handwriting was unmistakable. Her mother's. Elegant, precise, familiar. Each word felt like a ghost reaching through time. My dearest Eira, if fate has brought you here, then events have unfolded exactly as I feared. Listen carefully. Nothing you were told about the fall of Moonfire is true. The bloodline was not destroyed, it was hidden. Someone betrayed us from within. Trust no counsel, trust no elder, trust especially no one who claims to speak for tradition. The enemy wears familiar faces. Eira's breath caught. She read the passage twice, 3 times. The words only became more frightening. Someone betrayed us, not an enemy, not a rival pack, someone inside, someone trusted. Rowan crouched beside her. What does it say? She handed him the letter. The Alpha read silently. His expression darkened with each line. Finally, he exhaled. This changes everything. Eira stared at the horizon. No. Her voice sounded hollow. It destroys everything. Because if her mother had lied about dying, then what else had been a lie? They returned to Iron Vale before sunset. Word spread quickly. Too quickly. By the time Rowan called a private meeting, half the settlement seemed aware that something important had happened. The council chamber felt tense. Mara stood near the fireplace. Lyra organized notes across a table. Gideon leaned against the wall, arms folded, watching everyone. Eira noticed how protective he remained of Rowan, even suspicious. A good beta, possibly too good. Rowan placed the journal in the center of the table. This was hidden inside the mountain marker. Lyra immediately moved closer. Her eyes widened. Is that authentic? Very. The historian carefully opened the journal. The first few pages contained personal notes, names, dates, observations. Then she found something else. A map. Everyone leaned forward. The map depicted territory stretching far beyond Iron Vale. Ancient pack boundaries, forgotten settlements, long-lost landmarks. Several locations had been marked in silver ink. Mara frowned. What are those? Lyra traced one location. Sanctuaries. Eira looked up. What? The scholar nodded. Moonfire sanctuaries. The room fell silent. The bloodline maintained hidden safe houses. Eira felt another piece of the puzzle shift into place. Safe houses, escape routes, contingency plans. Her family had expected danger, expected betrayal, expected war, long before it arrived. Lyra continued examining the journal. Then she froze. Her expression drained of color. What? The scholar slowly turned the page. Everyone looked. A list of names filled the parchment, dozens of them. Moonfire descendants, bloodline members, families, children, guardians. And beside many names was a symbol, a black X. Eira immediately understood. Dead. The marked names were dead. The unmarked names might not be. Her eyes scanned desperately, searching, hoping, praying. Then she found it. Aurelia Moonfire. No black mark, no indication of death, nothing. The room seemed to spin. Her mother wasn't listed among the dead. Aurelia Moonfire was recorded as alive, or at least she had been when the journal was hidden. Impossible, Gideon muttered. No, Mara whispered. Not impossible? The healer looked terrified, more terrified than Eira had ever seen. What is it? Rowan asked. Mara hesitated, then answered quietly. If Aurelia survived. She looked toward Eira. Then someone has been protecting her. That night, Rowan couldn't sleep. The curse was getting worse, again. He stood alone inside the training grounds. Moonlight covered the snow. The settlement slept, at least most of it. Pain twisted through his chest. The familiar sensation spread beneath his skin, burning, growing, waiting. For years he had hidden it. For years only Mara knew. But the curse was changing, accelerating. The recent attacks weren't coincidence. Something was feeding it, strengthening it. A low growl escaped him. His hands trembled. Dark veins briefly appeared along his forearm, then vanished. The sight made his stomach twist. Not much longer. He didn't know how much time remained, but not much. Footsteps interrupted his thoughts. Rowan immediately straightened. Eira emerged from the shadows, her silver-gray coat wrapped tightly around her. Neither seemed surprised to find the other awake. Nightmares? Rowan asked. A sad smile touched her lips. Memories. He understood, more than she realized. For a while they stood together in silence, watching the moon, listening to distant wind. The tension between them felt different now. Still cautious, still uncertain, but softer. The beginning of trust. Neither acknowledged it. Eventually Eira looked at him. Why did you help me today? Rowan frowned. What do you mean? You could have handed me over to your council. She shrugged. Most alphas would. The question lingered. Rowan considered his answer carefully, then spoke honestly. Because I know what it's like to lose family. For a moment, something vulnerable crossed his face. Gone almost immediately. But Eira saw it. The wound beneath the armor. The grief beneath the alpha. And suddenly she realized something important. Rowan wasn't carrying only responsibility. He was carrying guilt. A great deal of it. Before she could ask more, a scream shattered the night. Both froze. The sound came from the western edge of the settlement. Another scream followed, then another. Chaos erupted instantly. Lights flared across Iron Vale. Doors burst open. Wolves rushed into the streets. Rowan was already moving. Eira ran beside him. They reached the western quarter within minutes. The scene that greeted them made Eira's blood run cold. 3 buildings were burning. Pack members fought the flames. Warriors searched desperately through smoke. But it wasn't the fire that caught Rowan's attention. It was the symbol painted across one wall. Fresh, black, deliberate. A crescent moon split by a claw mark. Everyone stopped when they saw it. Even Mara. Even Gideon. Fear spread through the crowd. What is that? Eira asked. No one answered immediately. Finally Lyra whispered, the mark of severance. Eira frowned. The what? The historian swallowed. It belonged to the group that hunted the Moonfire line. Silence crashed over the street. The fire crackled. Smoke rose into the night sky. Then a scout emerged from one of the burning buildings. His face was pale, terrified. He looked directly at Rowan. Alpha! The young wolf struggled to speak. "What is it?" Rowan demanded. The scout pointed toward the ruins. "We found a body." The Alpha's expression hardened. "Whose?" The scout hesitated, then answered. And the answer shocked everyone. "It's Elder Seraphine's assistant." A pause, then, "And someone carved a message into the wall beside him." Rowan moved immediately. The crowd followed. Inside the damaged building, soot covered everything. A dead wolf lay near the far wall, but it was the message above him that drew every eye. 3 words, written in blood. "The heir returns." And beneath those words, another sentence. One that turned every face toward Eira. "Find her before they do." Chapter 6. The Bond Unspoken. The message remained burned into Eira's thoughts long after the fire was extinguished. Find her before they do. Not before we do. Not before Iron Vale does. Before they do. Someone else was hunting her. Someone organized. Someone powerful. Someone who already knew she existed. The realization settled heavily over Iron Vale. No one slept well that night. Least of all, Eira. The following morning, Rowan ordered additional patrols along every border. Warriors filled the training grounds before sunrise. Scouts moved in and out of the settlement carrying reports. The atmosphere had changed. Iron Vale was preparing for something. A siege, a hunt, a war. No one knew which. Eira stood near the western wall watching wolves train. Their movements were precise, efficient. Years of discipline visible in every strike. "You're staring." She didn't turn. "I was observing." Rowan stepped beside her. "Same thing." A rare hint of amusement touched his voice. Eira found herself fighting a smile, annoyingly. She was beginning to enjoy these moments. Small moments, quiet moments. Moments when Rowan wasn't acting like the most feared alpha in the north. Moments when he seemed simply human. Dangerous realization. Very dangerous, because attachment led to pain. It always had. "How many wolves are in Iron Vale?" she asked. "Almost 600. Her eyebrows lifted. "That's larger than most territories. We protect several smaller communities." The answer surprised her. Most alphas expanded territory for power. Rowan seemed to do it out of responsibility. Another dangerous detail. The more she learned about him, the harder it became to keep her distance. Rowan leaned against the wall. "You should learn to defend yourself." Eira laughed. That earned a raised eyebrow. "You think that's funny? I've survived alone for 7 years, and I know how to defend myself." The Alpha's gaze moved toward the training field. Against ordinary wolves, maybe. That immediately irritated her. Maybe? Without warning, Eira lunged. Fast. Faster than most wolves could react. She grabbed Rowan's wrist and attempted to use his momentum against him. The move should have worked. Instead, she found herself pinned against the wall. 1 second later, barely breathing, Rowan held both her wrists above her head. The movement had been effortless. The realization annoyed her almost as much as the proximity. Their faces were inches apart. Too close. Far too close. Neither spoke. Neither moved. For several long seconds, the world seemed strangely quiet. Eira became painfully aware of everything. The warmth of his skin, the scent of pine and winter, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, the surprising gentleness of his grip. Then Rowan released her. Immediately, as though realizing the same thing. The tension lingered anyway. Unspoken, dangerous, neither acknowledged it. "Training begins tomorrow," Rowan said. Then he walked away, leaving Eira staring after him and wondering why her pulse refused to slow. That afternoon, Lyra summoned Eira to the archives. The historian sat surrounded by ancient books, dozens of them, possibly hundreds. Paper covered nearly every surface. Eira wasn't sure whether Lyra lived here or merely forgot to leave. The scholar looked exhausted, but excited. A worrying combination. I found something. Eira immediately sat down. What now? Lyra opened a weathered journal. The moonfire line wasn't merely guarding a doorway. Eira sighed. Of course there was more. There was always more. What were they guarding? Lyra hesitated, then answered quietly. A prison. The room fell silent. Eira stared. A prison? The scholar nodded. Ancient records mention something called the Hollow King. The name alone felt wrong, cold, unpleasant, dangerous. What is that? No one knows. Lyra rubbed tired eyes. The descriptions are fragmented. She slid a page across the table. Eira read carefully. The Hollow King shall remain beneath the veil while moonfire blood endures. A chill ran through her. The wording sounded familiar. Ancient, prophetic. Exactly the kind of thing she hated. The veil? Unknown. Helpful. Lyra grimaced. I know. The historian pointed toward another passage. This one was newer, written by Aurelia Moonfire herself. Eira immediately recognized her mother's handwriting. Her chest tightened. She leaned closer. The note was short, only one sentence. The prison weakens. Someone is helping it break. Eira looked up. Lyra looked equally unsettled. Neither needed to say it aloud. The implication was obvious. Someone had been working against the moonfire line for years, possibly decades. Training the next morning turned into a disaster, at least from Eira's perspective. The entire pack seemed determined to watch. Warriors gathered around the sparring grounds. Children climbed fences. Even Mara appeared. Gideon looked entirely too amused. Eira hated all of them, especially Gideon. You look nervous. I'm considering violence. Good. The beta grinned. That'll make this entertaining. Rowan entered moments later. The crowd immediately quieted. The Alpha stepped into the training circle. His eyes found Eira. Ready? No. Excellent. She glared. The spectators laughed. Traitors. Absolute traitors. The sparring began, and quickly became humiliating. Rowan wasn't merely stronger, he was smarter. Every attack she launched was anticipated, every opening exploited, every mistake punished, not cruelly, efficiently. 20 minutes later, Eira found herself flat on her back. Again. The crowd applauded. She considered faking her own death. Rowan offered a hand. She ignored it, then accepted it anyway, to her annoyance. The Alpha pulled her upright. Better. That was better? You lasted twice as long. Eira stared, then realized he was serious. For some reason that made her laugh. A genuine laugh, unexpected. The sound surprised both of them. Rowan's expression softened briefly, and something shifted. Small, subtle, but real. For the first time since arriving, Eira felt almost normal, almost safe. The feeling terrified her. The attack came at sunset, fast, violent, unexpected. A border scout staggered through the gates covered in blood. The alarm sounded instantly. Warriors rushed toward the entrance. Rowan arrived within seconds. What happened? The scout collapsed to one knee. His face was pale, terrified. There were 12 of them. Who? The scout struggled to breathe. They weren't wolves. Silence spread. Everyone exchanged uneasy looks. The young wolf swallowed. They moved like wolves. A pause. But their eyes, fear filled his expression. They were completely black. Mara immediately went pale. Lyra looked equally alarmed. Eira noticed. What? Neither answered. Rowan crouched beside the scout. Where? North Ridge. The Alpha stood instantly. "Gideon!" The Beta nodded, already understanding. "Warriors with me!" The settlement erupted into motion. Within minutes, a search party headed toward the northern border. Eira followed, ignoring every order to remain behind. Naturally. The journey took less than an hour. The attack site was easy to find. Broken trees, blood, signs of struggle. Something terrible had happened here. Then Rowan found tracks. He knelt, studying the snow. His expression darkened. "What is it?" Gideon asked. The Alpha pointed. The tracks resembled wolf prints, except they were wrong. Too large, too deep, almost distorted, as if something had imitated a wolf without truly becoming one. A cold sensation settled over Eira. Then she smelled it. The scent. Faint, ancient, familiar. Impossible. Her entire body froze. "No!" Rowan immediately looked up. "What?" Eira stared into the forest, heart pounding, pulse racing, because she recognized that scent. She hadn't smelled it in 7 years. Not since the night everything burned. The scent of the person who had betrayed her family. The scent of the wolf responsible for destroying the Moonfire line. Someone she believed dead. Someone who should not exist. Footsteps suddenly echoed from deeper within the trees. Slow, deliberate. A figure emerged from the darkness. Tall, wrapped in black, face hidden beneath a hood. Every warrior tensed. The stranger stopped just beyond the tree line, watching, waiting. Then the figure spoke. One sentence, enough to shatter the fragile peace Eira had built around herself. "Your mother is alive." The world stopped. Before anyone could react, the stranger disappeared. Gone, as if swallowed by the forest itself, leaving only silence and 1,000 terrifying questions. Chapter 7. Night of Ashes. No one spoke during the journey back to Iron Vale. The silence felt heavier than the winter sky above them. Eira rode beside Rowan, her mind trapped in a storm of questions. "Your mother is alive." The words replayed endlessly. She wanted to dismiss them, wanted to believe it was a trick, a lie, manipulation. But the problem was simple. The stranger had known too much. The journal, the Moonfire symbol, the bloodline, the betrayal. Things almost nobody should have known. Rowan glanced toward her. "You recognize the scent." It wasn't a question. Eira stared ahead. For a long moment, she considered lying. Then she remembered the promise she had silently made to herself after finding her mother's journal. No more running from every truth. Not all of them. Yes, the Alpha waited. Eventually she continued. "The scent belonged to someone who was at my family's estate the night everything happened." Rowan's expression hardened. "A survivor?" "No." Fear settled deep inside her chest. "Worse." His eyes narrowed. "You think they're responsible? I know they are." The wind carried silence between them. Finally, Rowan said quietly, "Then we'll find them." The certainty in his voice should not have comforted her. Yet somehow it did, and that frightened her almost as much as the stranger. Iron Vale prepared for war. Within 2 days, every patrol doubled. Every watchtower was reinforced. Every border crossing was guarded. The attacks had become impossible to ignore. 3 more wolves fell victim to the strange corruption. Each one recovered after speaking cryptic warnings. Each warning involved Eira, or Moonfire, or something called the Vale. No one fully understood what any of it meant. Tension spread throughout the pack. Fear followed close behind. Rumors grew. Whispers filled hallways. Questions followed Eira wherever she went. Most wolves remained respectful. A few did not. The confrontation happened during breakfast. Eira entered the dining hall to find conversations already underway. Pack members filled long wooden tables. The smell of fresh bread and roasted meat filled the room. For a few moments, everything seemed normal. Then someone stood. A warrior, young, strong, angry. His name was Bren. Eira had noticed him before. He had never tried to hide his dislike. Now he stared openly. How many more wolves need to get hurt because of her? The room instantly fell silent. Bren pointed toward Eira. She arrives and suddenly ancient curses start appearing. No one answered. That encouraged him. We don't know who she is. His voice rose. We don't know what she is. Eira remained still. Years ago, such accusations would have hurt. Now they simply exhausted her. Bren took another step. We should send her away. A chair scraped across the floor. Everyone turned. Rowan stood. The Alpha hadn't raised his voice, hadn't bared his teeth, hadn't shown aggression. Yet the room immediately froze. Complete silence. Absolute silence. Rowan looked at Bren. Only once. The young warrior lowered his eyes instantly. Sit down. Bren obeyed. Without argument, without hesitation. The Alpha turned toward the room. Eira remains under my protection. No one challenged him. No one dared. The matter was settled, at least publicly. But as Eira sat down, she noticed something disturbing. Several wolves still looked uncertain, still afraid, still suspicious, and fear had a way of growing. That evening, Mara summoned Rowan and Eira to the healing lodge. The older woman looked exhausted, more exhausted than usual. Dark circles lingered beneath her eyes. Her hands trembled slightly. Something was wrong. What happened? Rowan asked. Mara closed the door. Then she revealed the reason. A large map covered her desk. Dozens of markings had been added. Red circles, black symbols, ancient runes. The healer pointed toward them. These are the locations of every corruption incident. Rowan studied the map. So? Mara swallowed. They form a pattern. The room grew quiet. Eira stepped closer. At first, the markings appeared random. Then she saw it. The shape, the design, the horrifying symmetry. The incidents formed a giant circle, a ritual circle. Her blood ran cold. What does it mean? Mara looked toward her. Fear lingered in the healer's eyes. The prison is weakening. Silence followed. The older woman pointed toward the center of the pattern. One location, one mountain, one place. Eira immediately recognized it. The mountain where they found Aurelia's journal. The center point, Mara whispered. Someone is trying to open the veil. The attack began shortly after midnight. The alarms woke the entire settlement. A horn blasted through the darkness. Once, twice, 3 times. Enemy attack. Eira was already running before fully waking. Doors slammed open throughout Iron Vale. Warriors flooded the streets, shifting mid-stride. Fur, teeth, claws. Chaos exploded everywhere. Then the screams started. Real screams, terrified screams, the kind that froze blood. Flames erupted along the western wall. Arrows streaked through the night. Explosions shattered rooftops. The enemy had entered the settlement. Rowan! Eira spotted him immediately. The Alpha stood near the main gate directing warriors. His wolf surged beneath the surface, barely restrained. Gideon appeared beside him. We've been breached. Where? Everywhere. The beta's expression looked grim. There are too many. Another explosion rocked the settlement. A nearby building collapsed. Pack members scattered. Children cried. Smoke filled the air. Then Eira saw them. The attackers. Not wolves, not entirely. Their bodies resembled wolves twisted into something unnatural. Larger, darker, wrong. Their eyes were completely black, exactly as the scout described. The creatures moved through Iron Vale like living nightmares, killing, destroying, burning. The battle began in earnest. Eira shifted. Silver-gray fur exploded across her skin. Instinct took over. The first creature lunged. She met it head-on. Their collision sent both crashing into the snow. The beast snarled. Black saliva dripped from jagged teeth. Its scent made her stomach turn. Decay, corruption, ancient darkness. The creature attacked again. Eira twisted aside. Claws sliced through empty air. She countered immediately. Her fangs found flesh. The monster screamed. Dark blood stained the snow. Then something strange happened. Silver light flashed beneath Eira's skin. The creature recoiled, terrified, as though her touch burned it. The realization shocked her. The creature fled. Actually fled. Before she could process why, another attacked. Then another. Everywhere around her the battle raged. Warriors fought desperately. The enemy seemed endless, and they weren't here to conquer. They were searching for someone, searching for her. Near the center of the settlement, Rowan fought like a force of nature. Black fur, blue eyes, massive power. The Alpha tore through enemies with terrifying efficiency. Yet something worried Eira. His movements weren't as smooth as before, not as controlled. The curse. She remembered the dark veins, the hidden pain, the burden he carried. A creature lunged from behind. Eira reacted instantly. "Rowan!" The Alpha turned too late. The monster struck. Claws raked across his shoulder. Blood exploded across the snow. Rowan roared. The sound shook the night. Eira reached him seconds later. Together they forced the creature back. But the damage was done. Blood soaked Rowan's fur. The wound looked deep. Dangerously deep. Their eyes met briefly. Something passed between them. Fear. Not for themselves. For each other. The realization struck both at once. Neither acknowledged it. There wasn't time. More enemies surged forward. The battle continued. Hours later, the attackers finally retreated. Not because they were defeated, because they chose to leave. As suddenly as they arrived, they vanished into the darkness, leaving devastation behind. Smoke drifted across Iron Vale. Buildings burned. Warriors searched through rubble. Healers rushed between the wounded. The first rays of dawn illuminated the destruction and the losses. Too many losses. Far too many. Eira stood beside Rowan in exhausted silence. The Alpha's shoulder had been bandaged. His face remained unreadable, but grief lingered in his eyes. A young scout approached slowly. Tears filled his expression. Rowan already knew, before the words were spoken. "What is it?" The scout swallowed, then answered. "We found the missing patrol." The Alpha's jaw tightened. "Alive?" The young wolf lowered his head. "No." Silence followed. Then the scout handed Rowan something recovered from the bodies. A black iron medallion. Ancient, marked with a familiar symbol. A crescent moon split by a claw mark. The mark of severance. But this time there was something else engraved beneath it. A name. One single name. A name that made Mara go pale. A name that made Lyra step backward. A name that made Rowan curse under his breath. Eira looked down and felt her entire body go cold, because the medallion belonged to the leader of the enemy force, and engraved into the metal was a name she recognized from her mother's journal, a name listed among the dead. Aurelia Moonfire. Chapter 8. The Face Behind the Mask. For several seconds, nobody moved. The medallion rested in Rowan's palm, cold, heavy, impossible. Eira stared at the engraved name. Aurelia Moonfire, her mother, the woman she had mourned for 7 years, the woman whose journal had suggested she was alive, the woman now somehow connected to the monsters that attacked Iron Vale. Nothing made sense. It could be a forgery, Gideon said. His voice broke the silence. It could. But he didn't sound convinced. Neither did anyone else. Mara looked physically ill. Lyra seemed equally shaken. Rowan remained silent, studying the medallion, thinking, always thinking. Finally, he closed his hand around it. Inside. No one argued. The council chamber felt colder than usual. A storm brewed beyond the mountains. Gray clouds gathered across the sky. Inside, tension filled every corner of the room. The medallion lay at the center of the table. Like evidence, like a weapon, like a threat. Eira hated looking at it. Rowan sat at the head of the table. Gideon stood nearby. Mara and Lyra occupied opposite sides. For the first time since arriving, Eira felt truly exhausted. Not physically, emotionally. Every answer seemed to create 3 more questions. Lyra finally broke the silence. The engraving is authentic. Nobody looked surprised. The historian continued. The metal is at least 20 years old. Eira rubbed her forehead. So my mother either owned this, her voice faltered, or someone wanted us to think she did. Mara nodded. Exactly. Rowan leaned forward. The question is why? No one had an answer, at least not immediately. Then Gideon spoke. What if we're asking the wrong question? The room turned toward him. The beta's expression remained serious. What if the medallion wasn't left for us? Silence followed. Eira frowned. What do you mean? Gideon pointed toward the object. Every attack, every message, every symbol. His gaze settled on Eira. They all lead back to you. A cold realization settled over the room. Not Iron Vale, not Rowan, not the council, her. The enemy wasn't attacking territory. They were sending messages, communicating, manipulating, trying to draw her somewhere. The realization made Eira's stomach twist. Because if Gideon was right, then she wasn't caught in the middle. She was the target. That evening, Rowan found Eira standing atop the northern watchtower. The settlement stretched below. Rebuilding had already begun. Wolves repaired damaged roofs. Healers moved among the injured. Life continued, because it had to. Rowan stepped beside her. Neither spoke immediately. The silence felt familiar now. Comfortable. A dangerous thing. Eventually, Eira said, What if they're right? He glanced toward her. About what? What if all of this is because of me? The admission felt strange, vulnerable, honest. She hated how easy honesty had become around him. Rowan considered the question, then shook his head. You're confusing cause and blame. Eira frowned. What's the difference? The Alpha looked toward the mountains. A fire starts because lightning strikes a tree. A pause. That doesn't make the tree guilty. For several seconds she simply stared at him. Then, unexpectedly, she laughed. A small laugh. A tired laugh. A philosophical Alpha. I have many talents. The dry response surprised another smile from her, one that faded slowly, because reality remained. The attacks, the bloodline, the secrets, the fear. Rowan studied her carefully. You carry everything alone? The observation hit harder than expected. Eira looked away. It's easier. No. His voice remained gentle. It's familiar. Silence followed. Dangerous silence. The kind that exposed truths. Eira swallowed. For the first time in years, she wanted to tell someone everything, every fear, every scar, every memory. And that terrified her, because she was beginning to trust him. The next morning changed everything. Lyra arrived at breakfast carrying a stack of documents. The historian looked excited and frightened. A terrible combination. "I found something." Everyone immediately followed her to the archives. The scholars spread papers across a large table, maps, letters, records, old council documents. For several moments, she said nothing, as if struggling to organize her thoughts. Then she pointed toward a name, a familiar name, Talon Reed. Eira blinked. Talon, the young scout, one of Iron Vale's most trusted wolves, the cheerful warrior who delivered reports, helped rebuild homes, risked his life during the attack. "What about him?" Rowan asked. Lyra swallowed. "I found inconsistencies." The room grew quiet. The historian slid several papers forward. "His records don't match." Gideon frowned. "Explain." "Talon arrived 12 years ago." She pointed at one document. "But according to these records," another document, "he shouldn't exist." Silence. Absolute silence. Eira stared. "What does that mean?" Lyra looked genuinely disturbed. "It means the identity of Talon Reed was created." A chill ran through the room. The scholar continued. "There was never a Talon Reed before 12 years ago." No one spoke. No one moved. Then Gideon cursed, quietly. Because everyone had reached the same conclusion. The young scout wasn't who he claimed to be. Finding Talon proved impossible. His quarters were empty. His belongings gone. No one had seen him since sunrise. The realization spread through Iron Vale quickly. Too quickly. Panic followed. Because if Talon had lied, what else had he lied about? Hours later, warriors finally discovered a hidden room beneath an abandoned storage building. The room contained maps, messages, secret routes, information about Iron Vale, years of information. Someone had been spying on the pack, for years. Eira stared at the evidence in disbelief. Talon, kind, friendly, loyal-seeming Talon. A spy. The betrayal struck harder than expected. Not because she trusted him, because Rowan had. Gideon had. The entire pack had. Rowan picked up a sealed letter found among the documents. His expression hardened immediately. "What?" Without answering, he handed it to Eira. She opened it carefully. The handwriting was unfamiliar. The contents were not. "Continue observing Alpha Rowan Thorne. The curse progresses faster than expected. The Moonfire heir must be located before awakening occurs. Do not engage directly unless authorized. Await further instructions. S." The room fell silent. Eira read the letter twice, then a third time. One detail stood out. One letter, one signature. S.A. single initial. Simple, almost meaningless. Except everyone in the room immediately thought of the same person. Mara looked pale. Lyra looked horrified. Even Gideon seemed shaken. Only Rowan remained expressionless. Too expressionless. Because there was only one powerful figure in Iron Vale whose name began with S. One respected elder. One spiritual advisor. One woman trusted by every pack in the region. Elder Seraphine. "No," Mara whispered. "It can't be." But her voice lacked conviction. Deep down, nobody was certain anymore. That night, another message arrived. A black feathered raven landed on the great hall windowsill. Strange, unnatural, almost impossible during winter. Attached to its leg was a scroll. No name, no seal, no signature, only a message. Rowan opened it while the others watched. The words were brief, terrifyingly brief. "Come alone, moonrise, Old Hollow Lake, if you want the truth about Aurelia." Eira's pulse accelerated. Old Hollow Lake. She recognized the name from the journal. One of the hidden sanctuaries, one of the locations marked in silver. Someone wanted her there. Someone who knew about her mother. Rowan immediately crumpled the message. No. Eira blinked. What? You're not going. I wasn't asking. The Alpha's eyes narrowed. The familiar argument began instantly. Neither willing to yield, neither willing to compromise. Finally, Gideon interrupted. You're both impossible. Neither disagreed. The beta sighed heavily. Then another scout burst into the room, out of breath, terrified. Alpha? Rowan turned. What happened? The young wolf swallowed hard. We found Talon. Silence fell. Everyone stared. Where? The scout's face lost color. In the eastern forest. A pause, then, he's dead. Shock swept through the room. Even Rowan looked surprised. Talon was murdered? The scout nodded. Hours ago. No one spoke. The implications were immediate. Dangerous. If Talon was dead, then someone had silenced him. Someone powerful enough to eliminate their own spy. The scout hesitated, then added, there was something else. Rowan's expression hardened. What? The young wolf struggled to answer, as though the words themselves frightened him. Finally he spoke. We found a woman beside the body. Every instinct inside Eira suddenly awakened, because she already knew. Somehow she knew. The scout looked directly at her, then delivered the revelation that shattered the room. She claims to be Aurelia Moonfire. Chapter 9. The Woman at the Edge of Winter. The room fell into stunned silence. No one breathed. No one moved. The words seemed to echo through the great hall. She claims to be Aurelia Moonfire. Eira felt the world tilt beneath her feet. Every thought vanished. Every sound faded. There was only that name, her mother's name. The name that had followed her through nightmares, memories, and grief for 7 years. The scout swallowed nervously. Alpha? Rowan reacted first. Where is she? We brought her to the healer's lodge. The Alpha was already moving. Eira followed immediately. No one tried to stop her. No one was foolish enough. The healer's lodge stood at the far edge of the settlement. Lantern light glowed through frosted windows. Several warriors guarded the entrance, far more than necessary, which meant the situation inside was already complicated. As Rowan entered, the room became silent. Mara stood beside a bed. Lyra lingered near the back wall. Gideon occupied a position beside the door. Everyone watched the woman sitting quietly near the fire. Eira stopped breathing. The woman slowly turned. Silver blonde hair, gray eyes, a familiar scar beneath her left eyebrow. The scar Eira remembered from childhood. The scar her mother received while teaching her how to ride through mountain trails. The sight struck like a physical blow. The room disappeared. Years vanished. For a brief moment, Eira was 10 years old again. Safe, loved, home. The woman smiled softly. Tears filled her eyes. Eira. The sound of her name shattered whatever composure remained. No? Eira took a step backward. The woman stood, slowly, carefully, as though approaching a frightened animal. Eira. No. Her voice cracked. 7 years of grief surged to the surface. Pain, anger, hope, fear, all tangled together. You died. The woman flinched. The reaction looked real, painfully real. I know. You died. The accusation came louder, raw, broken. The woman lowered her gaze. For a moment she looked older than Eira remembered. Tired, worn down, haunted. Then she whispered, I'm sorry. The apology ignited something inside Eira. Years of loneliness, years of running, years of believing she had been abandoned. You left me. The room remained silent. Nobody dared interrupt. Tears slid down the woman's face. I had no choice. Eira laughed bitterly. The sound hurt. There's always a choice. The woman's expression shattered. No. Her voice trembled. Not when the alternative is your daughter dying. Silence followed. Heavy, uncomfortable, painful. The woman took another step forward. Eira, please. No. Eira turned away, unable to look at her, unable to believe her, unable to trust herself if she did. Because the worst part wasn't the anger. It was the hope, the desperate hope that this truly was her mother. The conversation continued hours later. Only this time Rowan insisted on being present. So did Mara. And Gideon. Trust had become too valuable to give away freely. Aurelia sat across from them, calm, composed, though sadness lingered behind every expression. Rowan studied her carefully. Start from the beginning. Aurelia nodded. The attack on Moonfire was real. Eira looked up immediately. The woman continued. But not in the way people believe. The betrayal, Mara said quietly. Aurelia nodded. Yes. The room grew still. The Moonfire line discovered someone was weakening the veil. Lyra leaned forward. The prison. Again, Aurelia nodded. The prison. Fear settled across the room, because hearing it from an actual Moonfire survivor somehow made everything feel more real, more dangerous. Aurelia folded her hands. We discovered members of several councils had been corrupted. Rowan frowned. Corrupted how? The answer came softly. Influenced. A pause. Controlled. Silence followed. Nobody liked that answer. Nobody liked what it implied. Aurelia continued. The corruption spread slowly. Her gaze moved toward Eira. We didn't know who to trust. And that's why you disappeared? The question came from Rowan. Aurelia looked toward him. Yes. You left your daughter. Pain flickered across her face. I saved my daughter. Eira nearly interrupted, but something stopped her. The certainty in Aurelia's voice, the conviction, the guilt. Aurelia looked directly at her. I knew they would come for you. The room remained silent. Why? Eira asked. The woman hesitated, then answered. Because you're different. A familiar response, a frustrating response. Eira crossed her arms. Different how? Aurelia looked toward Mara, then Rowan, then back to her daughter, as if weighing a decision. Finally, she said, You're the first true Moonfire heir born in nearly 400 years. Silence crashed across the room. Even Lyra looked stunned. What does that mean? Rowan asked. Aurelia's expression darkened. It means Eira can do something none of us can. No one spoke. No one moved. The woman continued. She can seal the veil. That night brought more questions than answers. Aurelia revealed fragments. Only fragments. The veil, the prison, the corruption, ancient enemies, ancient wars. Nothing felt complete. Everything felt unfinished. Eira wandered through the settlement, unable to sleep. Snow drifted gently from dark skies. The air smelled of cedar and winter. Eventually, she found herself near the training grounds. Rowan was there, alone, again. She almost smiled. Apparently, neither of them believed in rest. The Alpha stood motionless beneath moonlight. His shoulders looked tense, painfully tense. Eavesdropping on the snow? He glanced over. A faint smile appeared. Thinking. Dangerous habit. It is lately. She moved beside him. Silence followed. Comfortable silence. The kind becoming increasingly common between them. Then Rowan winced. The movement was subtle, but Eira noticed. Immediately. What was that? The Alpha's expression hardened. Nothing. A lie. A terrible one. Eira stepped closer. Rowan. I'm fine. Another lie. Worse than the first. Without asking permission, she grabbed his wrist. The moment her fingers touched his skin, she froze. Something surged through her. A vision, darkness, chains, a vast cavern buried beneath stone, and Rowan, standing at its center, alone, while black veins consumed his body. Eira gasped and released him instantly. The vision vanished. The world snapped back into focus. Rowan stared. What happened? She struggled to breathe. The image lingered vividly. Too vividly. What did you see? His voice had become dangerously quiet. Eira hesitated, then answered honestly. You. The Alpha's expression tightened. Fear flashed across his eyes. Real fear. Not for himself, for what she might have learned. The realization told her everything. You knew. Rowan looked away, which was answer enough. You knew something was wrong. Silence. Eira. No. She stepped backward. Anger surged, not because he was suffering, because he had hidden it, because everyone kept hiding things. What is happening to you? The Alpha closed his eyes briefly, as though exhausted, as though carrying a burden too heavy to bear. Finally, he answered. The curse. The words barely rose above a whisper. What curse? A long pause followed. Then Rowan looked directly at her, and for the first time since they met, every wall around him seemed to crack. When my brother died, pain filled his voice. Something came back with me from the mountain. Cold settled across Eira's skin. What came back? The Alpha swallowed, then revealed the truth. The thing inside the prison. The world stopped. Every sound vanished. Every thought froze. Because if Rowan was telling the truth, then the enemy wasn't merely trying to open the veil. Part of it was already free, and it had been living inside Iron Vale's Alpha for years. Chapter 10. Beneath Hollow Mountain. For a long moment, Eira simply stared at Rowan. The wind moved through the training grounds. Snow drifted quietly from the sky, yet everything felt distant, muted, because only one thought remained. Part of it is already free. The thing imprisoned behind the veil. The force ancient bloodlines had sacrificed themselves to contain. The corruption responsible for the attacks. The darkness poisoning wolves. And somehow, a fragment of it lived inside Rowan. Her chest tightened. How long? The Alpha didn't pretend to misunderstand. 7 years. The answer hit like a hammer. The same year Moonfire fell. The same year Eira lost everything. Coincidence no longer felt possible. Tell me everything. Rowan looked toward the mountains. For a moment, he seemed older. Not physically. Emotionally. Like a man carrying too much for too long. My brother and I tracked a group of rogues into Hollow Mountain. The name immediately caught her attention. Hollow Mountain, the center point on Mara's map, the place connected to the weakening veil. Rowan continued. We found ruins. His voice grew quieter. Ancient ruins. A familiar chill crawled through Eira. Then what happened? Pain flickered across his face. Real pain. Not physical. Memory. We were attacked. The Alpha's jaw tightened. My brother died. Silence followed. The grief remained obvious. Raw, despite the years. And when I carried him out, Rowan looked down at his hands. Something came with us. Neither spoke for several moments. Then Eira asked the question neither wanted answered. What exactly is inside you? The Alpha's expression darkened. I don't know. For the first time, she believed him completely. The following morning, Rowan gathered a small team. No council, no warriors. Only those he trusted. Eira, Mara, Lyra, Gideon, and Aurelia. The atmosphere inside the great hall felt tense. A storm brewed beyond the mountains. Dark clouds rolled across the horizon, as if the world itself sensed what was coming. Rowan spread a map across the table. His fingers settled on a location deep within Iron Vale territory. Hollow Mountain. Silence followed. No one looked surprised. Aurelia slowly nodded. It was always going to come back to that place. Mara looked uneasy. You're certain? No. Aurelia's honesty startled everyone. Then she added, but every path leads there. The room fell quiet, because they all knew it was true. The attacks, the corruption, the veil, the prison. Everything pointed toward Hollow Mountain. Rowan folded the map. We leave in an hour. The journey took most of the day. The mountain stood farther north than Eira expected. Wild territory, untouched territory. The deeper they traveled, the stranger the forest became. The animals vanished. Birdsong disappeared. Even the wind felt wrong. Too still, too heavy. Gideon noticed first. I don't like this. That makes two of us, Lyra muttered. The historian clutched her notebook tightly. Nervous energy radiated from her. Eira understood. The entire forest felt like a warning. Ancient, patient, watching. By late afternoon they reached the mountain and immediately understood why no wolves came here. The place looked cursed. Black stone rose from the earth like jagged teeth. Ancient cliffs surrounded the peak. The air smelled faintly of ash despite the snow. Even Rowan looked uncomfortable. Aurelia stopped walking. Her expression had gone pale. Eira. The warning in her voice was immediate. What? The older woman stared at the mountain, then whispered, It's awake. Silence followed. Nobody liked that answer. The entrance waited halfway up the mountainside, hidden behind ice and stone, a narrow passage leading into darkness. Ancient symbols covered the surrounding walls, moonfire symbols, wolf symbols, and others Eira didn't recognize. The moment she stepped closer, something stirred inside her. Recognition, not memory, instinct. The carvings felt familiar, as though her blood remembered what her mind had forgotten. Lyra brushed snow from one section, then froze. What is it? The historian pointed. Words, ancient script. Eira stepped forward. Without realizing how, she began reading. Only the air may pass beyond the final gate. The group exchanged uneasy looks. Mara folded her arms. I hate prophecies. Agreed, Gideon said immediately. For once, everyone shared the same opinion. Eira placed a hand against the stone. Warmth spread beneath her fingertips. Silver light appeared, faint, soft, growing stronger. The symbols began to glow. The mountain trembled. A deep rumble echoed through the darkness. Then the entrance opened, slowly, stone grinding against stone, revealing a tunnel descending into blackness. Nobody spoke. Nobody needed to. There was only one direction left. Forward. The ruins beneath Hollow Mountain stretched far deeper than expected. Ancient corridors wound through the earth. Massive stone chambers appeared one after another. Every wall carried carvings, histories, warnings, records. The deeper they traveled, the colder the air became. Not ordinary cold. A supernatural cold. The kind that settled into bones. After nearly an hour, they reached a vast cavern. Everyone stopped. The sight stole their breath. A city. An entire city buried beneath the mountain. Ancient towers, broken bridges, collapsed temples, all hidden beneath centuries of stone. Lyra stared in awe. This can't be real. Yet it was. The evidence stood before them. A forgotten civilization. A forgotten history. Everything the modern Pax had lost. Aurelia looked devastated. They erased it. The grief in her voice surprised Eira. What? The older woman gestured toward the ruins. The councils erased everything. Silence followed. Mara frowned. Why? Aurelia's answer came quietly. because history became inconvenient. Nobody spoke. The implications were enormous, dangerous, because if this city had truly existed, then someone had deliberately hidden the truth for generations. Hours later, they found the temple. Everyone knew it immediately. The structure stood at the center of the ruined city, massive, ancient, untouched. A black staircase led upward. Strange silver flames burned within stone braziers. Impossible flames. Flames that had survived centuries. Eira's pulse quickened. The temple felt alive, watching, waiting. Rowan moved beside her. "You feel it too?" It wasn't a question. She nodded. The Alpha's expression tightened. Neither liked what they sensed. Together they climbed the stairs. The interior was worse, or perhaps better. Beautiful in a terrifying way. Ancient murals covered every wall. Stories preserved in stone. Eira approached the nearest one, then froze. The carving depicted wolves standing beside humans, not fighting, not ruling, standing together, guardians, protectors. Aurelia noticed. They were never meant to be rulers. The room fell silent. Who? The Moonfire line. Eira turned. Her mother looked toward the mural. The bloodline wasn't created to control the prison. A pause, then. It was created to protect both worlds. Questions exploded through Eira's mind. But before she could ask, a scream echoed through the temple. Everyone spun around. Lyra stumbled backward. Her face had gone completely pale. What happened? The historian pointed toward the far wall. A hidden chamber had opened. Ancient stone doors slowly moving apart. Beyond them waited another room, smaller, darker, and at its center stood a single object. A throne, carved from black crystal, chains wrapped around it. Hundreds of chains, thousands. The sight alone felt wrong, like staring into something forbidden. Then Eira noticed the figure sitting upon it. Not alive? Not exactly. A corpse, ancient, preserved, motionless, yet somehow watching. The entire room went silent, because everyone recognized the face, every single one of them. The corpse sitting on the throne looked exactly like Rowan. Not similar, not related. Exactly. The same eyes, the same features, the same face. As if Rowan himself had been sitting there for centuries, and carved into the throne beneath the corpse was a single name. The Hollow King. Chapter 11. The Weight of Forgotten Kings. No one moved. No one breathed. The torchlight flickered across black crystal and ancient stone, casting long shadows through the hidden chamber. Eira stared at the corpse on the throne. The resemblance was impossible. Not close, not similar, identical. The same sharp jaw, the same dark hair, the same features. Only the eyes differed. The corpse's eyes were closed. Thank the moon. Because Eira wasn't sure she could endure seeing them open. Beside her, Rowan stood utterly still. His face had lost all color. Gideon looked as if someone had punched him in the chest. Lyra clutched a notebook against her ribs. Mara whispered something under her breath that sounded suspiciously like a prayer. Aurelia looked terrified. Not surprised, terrified. And that frightened Eira more than anything else. "You knew." The words left her before she could stop them. Aurelia didn't answer immediately, which was answer enough. The older woman's gaze never left the throne. "Eira, you knew." Pain flickered across Aurelia's face. "Not this." She gestured toward the corpse. "I didn't know this. But you knew something." Silence. Finally, Aurelia nodded. A fragment. Nobody spoke. The admission hung heavily in the air. Rowan took a step forward. Toward the throne. Toward the corpse. toward the impossible reflection of himself. "Who is he?" His voice sounded strangely hollow. Aurelia swallowed, then answered, "The first king." The chamber became silent. Again. Lyra frowned. "What king?" Aurelia looked toward the ancient murals. "The first ruler before the Pax." The historian immediately shook her head. "That's impossible." "No." Aurelia's voice softened. "It's forgotten. There was a difference." The next several hours were spent exploring the temple. No one wanted to remain inside the throne chamber longer than necessary, especially Rowan. Eira noticed. Every time he looked at the corpse, tension flooded his entire body. The connection disturbed him. It disturbed everyone. Eventually, they discovered a hidden archive beneath the temple. Ancient records, stone tablets, metal scrolls, thousands of years of forgotten history. Lyra nearly cried from excitement, then nearly fainted from terror once she began reading. The truth emerging from the records changed everything. Again. Eira was beginning to hate that phrase. The truth. Every truth seemed worse than the last. One tablet in particular drew everyone's attention. Its symbols remained remarkably preserved. Aurelia translated first, then stopped. Her expression went pale. "What?" The older woman looked toward Rowan, then toward the throne chamber, then back to the tablet. Finally, she spoke. "The Hollow King wasn't imprisoned." Silence. Absolute silence. Mara stared. "What?" Aurelia pointed toward the text. "He imprisoned himself." Nobody understood. Nobody wanted to. Yet, the older woman continued. "Something entered our world." A pause. "A force." Another pause. "A consciousness." The room felt colder. "The king couldn't destroy it." Eira's pulse quickened. "So he sealed it." Aurelia nodded slowly. Inside himself. The implications hit like a physical blow. The darkness, the corruption, the prison, the veil. Everything. The Hollow King became the prison. The realization left everyone stunned. Rowan sat heavily on a stone bench. His face looked distant, haunted, because everyone else had reached the same conclusion. If the Hollow King had become the prison, and Rowan resembled him perfectly, then the resemblance wasn't coincidence. It was inheritance. That night they camped inside the ruins. No one wanted to travel through the mountains after dark, especially not after what they had discovered. Eira couldn't sleep. Again. Sleep seemed increasingly optional these days. She sat near one of the ancient terraces overlooking the buried city. Silver fire burned within distant braziers. The underground sky glittered with strange crystal formations. Beautiful, unsettling, lonely. Footsteps approached. Rowan. Of course, neither of them appeared capable of resting anymore. The Alpha sat beside her. For a while, neither spoke. The silence felt familiar, comfortable. Eventually, Rowan laughed softly. The sound surprised her. "What?" His smile lacked humor. "I spent years wondering why the curse chose me." A pause. Turns out it didn't. Eira looked toward him. Moonlight from the crystal ceiling reflected in his eyes. The sight made her chest tighten unexpectedly. Rowan stared into the distance. "My father never told me." Maybe he didn't know. The Alpha considered that, then nodded. Maybe. Neither seemed convinced. A cold breeze moved through the terrace. Then Rowan spoke again. "Are you angry?" The question caught her off guard. "About what?" "Your mother." Pain surfaced immediately. Fresh despite everything. Raw despite the reunion. Eira looked away. "I don't know." The honesty surprised them both. "I want to forgive her." Her voice cracked slightly. "I also want to scream at her." Rowan nodded. as if he understood perfectly. Maybe he did. Loss had shaped both of them. In different ways, but deeply. The Alpha hesitated, then reached for her hand, not forcefully, not possessively, simply there. An offer, a choice. For several seconds Eira stared, then she accepted. Their fingers intertwined, warmth spread through her chest. Gentle, unexpected, real. Neither spoke, neither needed to. The moment itself said enough. The attack came before dawn, naturally. Disaster never waited for convenient hours. The first warning arrived as a scream echoing through the ruins. Everyone woke instantly. Weapons drawn, wolves shifting, chaos. Eira sprinted toward the source alongside Rowan and Gideon. The sound came from the archive chambers. When they arrived, Lyra stood frozen beside a shattered wall. The historian looked horrified. "What happened?" She pointed, unable to speak. Rowan followed her gaze, then cursed. The archive had been destroyed. Ancient tablets smashed, records burned, centuries of history reduced to rubble. Someone had entered during the night. Someone who knew exactly what they were looking for. Gideon immediately began searching. His expression darkened. "There's more." The beta lifted a blood-stained parchment from the floor. Fresh blood, fresh message. The handwriting looked hurried, desperate. Eira recognized it immediately. Aurelia's. Her heart stopped. "What does it say?" Gideon read aloud. The words turned every face pale. "They know where the heir is. Trust no one. The council was never the enemy. It was built by the enemy." Silence crashed through the chamber. Then a second realization struck. Everyone looked around, searching, counting. One face was missing. Aurelia. Eira's blood ran cold. Where is she? Nobody answered, because nobody knew. And deep down, everyone feared the same thing. Aurelia hadn't left voluntarily. She had been taken. They found evidence less than an hour later. Tracks, signs of struggle. Blood. Not much. Enough. The trail led deeper into the ruins, toward sections of the buried city they had not yet explored. The pursuit lasted nearly 2 hours, long enough for dread to grow, long enough for hope to fade. Eventually, the trail ended at a massive stone courtyard, and what waited there changed everything. Again, a circle of hooded figures stood around an ancient monument, dozens of them, silent, motionless, watching. At the center knelt Aurelia, alive, restrained, a knife pressed against her throat. Eira immediately moved forward. Rowan caught her arm. "Wait." For once she listened. A figure stepped from the crowd. Tall, elegant, female. The hood fell back. Gasps echoed through the courtyard. Mara's face lost all color. Lyra stumbled backward. Even Gideon looked shocked, because they all recognized her. One of the most respected wolves in the north. One of the most trusted voices among the packs. One of Iron Vale's closest allies. Elder Seraphine, the spiritual advisor, the peacemaker, the wise elder, the woman everyone trusted. She smiled, calmly, almost kindly, and in that moment, Eira finally understood. The hidden enemy had never been hiding at all. Seraphine looked directly at Rowan, then at Eira, and spoke the words that confirmed every nightmare. "I've been waiting for both of you." Chapter 12. The Architect of Shadows. The courtyard felt unnaturally still. Ancient stone pillars surrounded the ruins like silent witnesses. Dozens of hooded figures stood motionless around the monument, their faces hidden, their loyalty unquestionable. Every one of them watched Seraphine. Not Rowan, not Eira. Seraphine. The realization alone was enough to shake the foundations of everything Iron Vale believed. For decades, Seraphine had been respected, trusted, revered. She had settled disputes between packs, blessed alpha ceremonies, advised councils, helped shape laws, and now she stood at the center of a conspiracy stretching across centuries. Aurelia knelt before her, bound, bruised, alive. At least for now. Seraphine smiled warmly, as though greeting old friends. The expression somehow made her more terrifying. Rowan stepped forward. The Alpha's voice was ice. "Release her," Seraphine sighed, as direct as ever. The knife at Aurelia's throat didn't move. Neither did the surrounding figures. Nobody seemed nervous. Nobody seemed afraid, which meant they believed they controlled the situation. That worried Eira. A lot. "Why?" Rowan asked. The single word carried years of betrayal, years of trust broken in an instant. Seraphine's smile softened. "You deserve an explanation." Eira almost laughed. The woman sounded genuinely sincere. That was perhaps the most disturbing part. Seraphine believed she was right, truly believed it. The hidden enemy rarely saw themselves as villains. They saw themselves as saviors. Seraphine began walking slowly through the courtyard. Her voice carried easily through the ruins. The world remembers a lie. No one interrupted. No one trusted themselves to. The packs tell stories about monsters imprisoned beyond the veil. A pause. They tell stories about heroes who sacrificed everything. She shook her head. Stories written by victors. Lyra frowned. History. Propaganda. Seraphine's correction came instantly. The historian looked offended, then uncomfortable, because some part of her suspected the elder might be right. The older woman gestured toward the ruined city surrounding them. "Look around." The buried civilization stretched endlessly beyond the courtyard. Broken towers, collapsed temples, forgotten roads, a lost world. "Do you know why this city disappeared?" Nobody answered. Seraphine smiled sadly. "Because it challenged power." Eira crossed her arms. "And that justifies murder?" The elder looked toward her. For the first time, genuine emotion appeared in her eyes. Regret. Not guilt. Regret. There was never another path. The answer chilled Eira, because Seraphine truly believed it. Every death, every betrayal, every lie. Necessary. Aurelia finally spoke. "You always wanted control." Seraphine laughed softly. "No." The elder looked toward the sky of crystal and stone. "I wanted freedom." Silence followed. Then she revealed the truth. The real truth. The one hidden beneath centuries of lies. The Hollow King failed. Everyone froze. Seraphine continued. "He trapped the darkness." Her gaze settled on Rowan. Instead of understanding it, a cold sensation crawled through Eira. The darkness, the corruption, the prison. Seraphine spoke of it almost affectionately, as though describing an old friend. The force beyond the veil isn't evil. A pause. It's evolution. Nobody spoke. Nobody believed her. Yet the conviction in her voice remained unsettling. Seraphine looked toward Eira. Your bloodline feared change. Then toward Rowan. His bloodline feared power. Finally, she spread her arms. The world stagnated because of both. The courtyard fell silent, because the statement sounded insane. And yet, somehow, it explained everything. The obsession, the centuries of manipulation, the hidden network. Seraphine wasn't trying to destroy the prison. She was trying to open it, intentionally. Mara stepped forward. Her face looked heartbroken. "How long?" The question seemed to surprise Seraphine. The elder looked at her old friend, then answered honestly. 40 years. The healer closed her eyes. Pain flashed across her features. 40 years, 4 decades. An entire lifetime. Seraphine had been planning this longer than most wolves in the courtyard had been alive. "Why tell us now?" Gideon asked. The beta's hand rested on the hilt of his blade. Ready. Waiting. Seraphine's smile returned. "Because the final pieces are here." Eira felt her stomach tighten. The final pieces. She already knew. Moonfire and Rowan, the heir, and the king. The realization settled heavily over everyone present. Seraphine turned toward Rowan. "Do you know why the corruption never killed you?" The Alpha remained silent. The Elder answered anyway. "Because it recognized you." A chill swept through the courtyard. Seraphine pointed toward the temple, toward the hidden throne. "The Hollow King isn't merely your ancestor." A pause, then, "He's you." Silence exploded. Even the wind seemed to stop. Eira stared. Lyra looked horrified. Gideon cursed quietly. Rowan didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe. Seraphine continued. "The prison was never built from stone." Her voice softened. "It was built from blood." The implication struck like lightning. Reincarnation, inheritance, cycles, the same soul, again and again. Generation after generation, waiting, watching, guarding. Eira looked toward Rowan. His face revealed nothing, but his eyes held fear, real fear, because some part of him believed it. The battle began seconds later. No warning, no dramatic speech. Aurelia acted first. She slammed her shoulder into the wolf holding the knife. Chaos erupted instantly. The courtyard exploded into motion. Weapons flashed. Wolves shifted. Stone cracked beneath pounding feet. The hooded followers attacked from every direction. Eira shifted mid-stride. Silver-gray fur erupted across her body. The first attacker never reached her. She slammed into him with enough force to send both tumbling across the courtyard. Around her, war erupted. Gideon fought like a hurricane. Mara protected Lyra. Aurelia escaped her captors. And Rowan became something terrifying. The Alpha's black wolf tore through enemies with brutal efficiency. Yet something felt wrong. Very wrong. Dark veins glowed beneath his fur. The corruption, reacting, awakening. Seraphine noticed too. The Elder smiled, and that terrified Eira, because Seraphine wasn't losing, she was waiting. The truth arrived in the middle of battle, as truths often did, at the worst possible moment. Eira had just forced another attacker backward when a silver pulse erupted from the ancient monument. The shockwave knocked everyone off balance. The fighting stopped. Instantly, every eye turned toward the monument. Ancient symbols blazed with light, brighter, brighter, then brighter still. The structure began to crack. Deep fractures spread across the stone. Aurelia went pale. "No." Seraphine smiled. "Yes." The Elder stepped toward the monument, toward the growing light, toward the opening prison. Then she looked directly at Eira and delivered the final revelation, the revelation that shattered every assumption, every prophecy, every expectation. The Moonfire heir was never meant to seal the veil. Silence followed. Eira froze. "What?" Seraphine's smile widened. "The prophecy was altered." The world seemed to stop. Aurelia looked horrified. Mara staggered backward. Even Rowan stared. Because nobody had expected this. Nobody. Seraphine laughed softly. The councils changed the wording centuries ago. Her eyes glittered with triumph. The heir was never destined to close the prison. A pause. Then, she's destined to open it. The courtyard erupted into stunned silence. Every face turned toward Eira. Every thought shattered. Because if Seraphine was telling the truth, then everything they believed about the Moonfire line was a lie. And Eira wasn't the world's protector. She was its key. Chapter 13. The Last Hunt. For several seconds, no one moved. The battle had stopped. The courtyard had fallen silent. Only the growing light from the monument illuminated the ruins. Eira couldn't breathe. The words echoed through her mind. You're destined to open it. Not seal it, not protect it. Open it. Every lesson, every warning, every sacrifice. All of it suddenly felt uncertain. A lie built atop older lies. She looked toward Aurelia. Her mother's face had gone pale. Terrified. Not because she believed Seraphine, because she wasn't certain she was wrong. That realization hit harder than anything. Eira. Rowan's voice broke through the chaos in her thoughts. She looked at him. The Alpha moved closer. Not as a king, not as a leader, not as a symbol. Simply Rowan. The man who had stood beside her when nobody else did. The man she trusted. The man she had somehow fallen in love with without realizing it. His eyes never left hers. Look at me. She did. The world narrowed. The monument vanished. The ruins vanished. Only Rowan remained. Do you trust me? The question surprised her. Not because he asked, because she already knew the answer. Yes. No hesitation. No doubt. The truth settled between them. Something warm, something powerful, something earned. Rowan nodded once, then said the words she needed most. Then don't let her decide who you are. Silence followed, and for the first time since Seraphine's revelation, Eira felt the panic loosen its grip. Because Rowan was right. Prophecies weren't choices, actions were. Blood wasn't destiny, decisions were. And she was done allowing other people to define her life. The monument cracked again. A thunderous sound rolled through the buried city. The ground shook violently. Ancient towers groaned. Stone collapsed somewhere in the darkness. Everyone turned. The fractures spreading across the monument now pulsed with black light. Dark mist poured through widening gaps. The corruption, not a metaphor, not a legend. Real, alive, hungry. Mara stared in horror. The veil. Aurelia stepped forward. No. Her voice trembled. It's worse. The older woman looked toward Eira, toward Rowan, toward the growing darkness. The veil is an opening. Silence, then, it's breaking. Every wolf present felt the significance of those words. A damaged door could be repaired. A shattered one became something else entirely. Seraphine lifted her arms, almost reverently, as if welcoming an old friend. Finally, the elder smiled. Years of manipulation, years of betrayal, years of sacrifice. Everything had led here, to this moment, to this choice. The first creature emerged minutes later. It wasn't a wolf, not truly. It crawled through the fractured monument on elongated limbs. Its body appeared made from smoke and shadow. Its eyes glowed silver, not black, silver. Ancient intelligence lingered behind them. The thing paused, studying the world. Learning, remembering. Then it smiled. The sight made Eira's blood run cold, because the creature looked happy. Another emerged, then another, then dozens. The army beyond the veil had arrived, and Iron Vale wasn't prepared. No pack was, no council was, no one. The creatures spread through the ruins, silent, watching, waiting. One approached Seraphine. The elder knelt before it. A gesture of respect, of devotion, of worship. The creature touched her forehead, gently, affectionately. Then everything changed. Black veins exploded across Seraphine's skin. The corruption consumed her instantly. The elder screamed, collapsed, twisted, transformed. Everyone stared, even the creatures, because their loyal servant wasn't being rewarded. She was being consumed. Seraphine looked toward them, toward Eira, toward Rowan. Terror filled her eyes, real terror, the kind she had never experienced before, the kind that arrives when a person realizes they misunderstood everything. It lied. Her voice cracked. The creature smiled. Seraphine screamed again, then dissolved into ash. Silence followed. Heavy, awful, final. The architect of their suffering had spent 40 years serving something that never cared about her, and in the end, it hadn't even bothered to keep her alive. Panic spread among her followers. Several fled immediately. Others surrendered. Some simply stood frozen. Their leader was gone, their certainty gone with her. The creatures ignored them. Instead, every silver eye turned toward Rowan. The realization struck instantly. The Hollow King, the prison, the bloodline, the connection. The creatures weren't interested in Seraphine. They wanted him. A tall figure emerged from the darkness, different from the others, larger, older, stronger. Its silver eyes focused on Rowan. Then it spoke. The voice echoed through the entire city. "At last! Ancient, patient, terrible." The creature smiled. "We found you!" Every instinct inside Eira screamed danger. Not ordinary danger, existential danger, the kind that changes worlds. The creature stepped closer. The corruption inside Rowan reacted immediately. Dark veins spread across his neck. His eyes flashed briefly. The Alpha staggered. Gideon moved instantly. "Rowan." The Alpha raised a hand, stopping him. The creature continued smiling. "You remember?" It wasn't a question. Rowan looked pale, confused, in pain. Then something happened. A memory. Not his. Older, far older. Eira saw it happen in real time. The shock, the recognition, the horror. Rowan looked toward the creature and whispered, "No." The creature's smile widened. "You do remember." The battle resumed. Only now it felt hopeless. The creatures moved impossibly fast, impossible to kill. Every wound healed, every attack failed. Pack warriors fought bravely. It wasn't enough. The enemy wasn't stronger. The enemy followed different rules. Aurelia realized it first. "Eira!" The older woman pointed toward the monument. "The answer is there." Eira turned. The fractured structure pulsed with silver and black light. Power, ancient power, waiting, calling. She could feel it, like a heartbeat beneath the earth. The key. Seraphine had been right about one thing. Eira was connected to it. The realization terrified her, because she finally understood. The Moonfire bloodline wasn't designed to seal the prison, or open it. It was designed to choose. A guardian, a living lock, a living key. Free will had always been the point. Not destiny. Choice. The truth struck like lightning, and somewhere deep within the monument something responded. Silver fire erupted. Ancient symbols awakened. The buried city trembled. The creatures reacted immediately. For the first time, they seemed afraid. The sight gave Eira hope, brief hope, dangerous hope. Then Rowan screamed. Everyone froze. The Alpha dropped to one knee. Darkness exploded from his body. The corruption, the fragment inside him. Awakening, growing, escaping. The creatures smiled. The larger one stepped forward. "The vessel opens." Panic surged through the battlefield. Because if Rowan fell, if the corruption fully consumed him, everything would be lost. Eira ran toward him, ignoring the danger, ignoring the battle, ignoring everything except him. She reached Rowan as he collapsed. His eyes met hers. Pain filled them. Fear. Not for himself, for her. Always for her. "Eira!" His voice sounded strained, broken. The darkness continued spreading, faster now, hungry, alive. The Alpha grabbed her wrist. His hand shook violently. Then he whispered the words that shattered her heart. "If it comes down to me or the world." A pause, a painful breath. Then, "Choose the world." Eira stared. The meaning was obvious, terrible, final, because Rowan believed he was becoming the prison's new door. And if he was right, the only way to save everyone might be losing him. Forever. Chapter 14. The Price of Dawn. No. The answer left Eira instantly, without hesitation, without thought, without doubt. Rowan's grip tightened around her wrist. The darkness continued spreading beneath his skin. Black veins crawled across his throat. His breathing had become uneven, painful. Every second seemed to worsen his condition. Yet he still looked at her, still worried about her, still trying to protect everyone else, even now, especially now. "Eira," his voice cracked. "You have to listen." "No." The battlefield raged around them. Creatures from beyond the veil surged through the ruins. Pack warriors fought desperately. Ancient towers collapsed. Silver fire blazed across the buried city. And still Eira refused to move, because Rowan was asking her to abandon him. And she couldn't. Not after everything. Not after every battle, every conversation, every moment. Not after falling in love with him. The realization settled quietly inside her. Simple, undeniable. She loved him. The truth should have terrified her. Instead, it brought clarity. Aurelia appeared beside them. Blood stained her sleeve. Exhaustion lined her face, yet determination burned in her eyes. "Eira!" Her mother knelt beside Rowan. The older woman examined the spreading corruption, then went pale, a reaction Eira didn't miss. "What?" Aurelia looked up. For a moment she seemed unable to speak. Then she whispered, "The prison isn't choosing him." Silence followed. Even Rowan looked confused. "What?" Aurelia swallowed. "The corruption isn't trying to possess you." The older woman stared at the darkness spreading through his veins, then toward the monument, then back. And suddenly understanding appeared. Horrifying understanding. "It's trying to wake you." The battlefield seemed to pause around those words. Not physically. The fighting continued. The screams continued. The destruction continued. Yet for Eira, the world narrowed. Wake him, not possess him. Wake him. The distinction mattered. A lot. Because it meant Rowan wasn't becoming the prison. He was connected to it. Connected to the Hollow King. Connected to the original sacrifice. The ancient creature leading the invasion smiled. Its silver eyes gleamed. At once, Eira understood. The enemy had never wanted Rowan dead. It wanted him awake. The realization sent ice through her veins. What happens if he wakes? The question barely rose above a whisper. Aurelia looked terrified. "I don't know." The honesty frightened Eira more than any answer could have. Another shockwave rolled through the city. The monument cracked further. Silver fire burst into the sky. The veil continued weakening. The creatures grew stronger. Pack wolves grew weaker. The battle was turning. Fast. Gideon crashed beside them. The beta was bleeding from half a dozen wounds. His face looked grim. "We're losing." No one argued. There was nothing to argue. The truth stood visible all around them. Iron Vale warriors were exhausted. The creatures never seemed to tire. Every minute cost more lives, more ground, more hope. Mara arrived moments later. Lyra close behind. The historian clutched several stone tablets recovered from the temple. Even now she carried books into battle. Eira almost laughed. Almost. Then Lyra spoke, and everything changed. "I found the final record." Everyone turned. The historian's hands shook. whether from fear or excitement, Eira couldn't tell. What record? Lyra looked toward Rowan, then toward Eira, then at the monument. The ending. Silence followed. The historian swallowed. The story was incomplete. A pause. The Hollow King didn't imprison the darkness alone. The buried city seemed to hold its breath. Lyra continued. There were two. The realization struck instantly. The king. And someone else. Someone forgotten. Someone erased. Aurelia's eyes widened. No! The older woman stepped forward, as if suddenly remembering. Lyra nodded. The moonfire heir. Eira froze. The historian's voice trembled. The first heir and the first king made the sacrifice together? Everything suddenly clicked into place. The bloodlines, the connection, the repeated cycles, the reason both families existed, the reason both had been hunted. The prison had never belonged to one person. It required two. Always two. A guardian and a king, a key and a lock, together, not apart. The realization spread through the battlefield. Hope, fear, understanding, all tangled together. Eira looked at Rowan. The Alpha was struggling to remain conscious. The corruption continued growing. Time was running out. Fast. The monument pulsed again. This time Eira felt it. The connection, the power, the choice. The city beneath them seemed alive. Ancient voices echoed through her blood. Not words, memories. Thousands of years of memories. Guardians, sacrifices, promises. Every generation leading to this moment. And suddenly she knew what needed to happen. Not because prophecy demanded it, because she chose it. The distinction mattered. It always would. Eira. Rowan's voice sounded weak. She looked down. The Alpha stared up at her. Pain filled his eyes, but something else had joined it. Love. The same realization she carried. Neither needed to say it. They already knew. Some truths existed beyond words. The battle reached the monument minutes later. The creatures surged toward it, toward Rowan, toward Eira. The final assault. Everything converging. The ancient leader smiled. Victory seemed certain. Then Eira stepped forward. Alone. Silver fire erupted beneath her skin. The light spread outward. Brighter, brighter, then brighter still. The battlefield stopped. Every creature turned. Every wolf stared. The monument answered her call. Ancient symbols awakened across the city. Entire buildings began glowing. The buried civilization remembered. The Vale remembered. The blood remembered. And for the first time, the enemy looked afraid. The ancient leader stepped backward. One step, then another. Its smile vanished. What are you doing? Eira felt power flowing through her. Not corruption, not destruction. Something older, something pure. Choice, connection, unity. The truth hidden beneath centuries of lies. She finally understood. The prison had never been built to keep something out. It had been built to keep worlds apart. And separation had created the darkness, fear, isolation, division, everything the creatures fed upon. The realization struck like dawn. The enemy wasn't born evil. It had become evil through abandonment, through endless imprisonment, through isolation. The same wounds that destroyed people, the same wounds that destroyed packs, the same wounds that almost destroyed her. Eira looked toward Rowan, then toward the creatures, then toward the Vale, and made her choice. I won't destroy either world. The ancient leader stared. Confusion spread across its features, because it expected war, expected sacrifice, expected another prison. Not this, never this. Silver fire exploded across the ruins. The Vale began changing, transforming, reforming, not closing, not opening, becoming something new, a bridge. The battlefield shook violently. The sky above the buried city cracked with silver light. The creatures screamed, not in pain, in shock, because everything was changing, everything. The power consumed Eira, faster than expected. Her knees buckled, blood filled her mouth. The silver fire burned, every memory, every emotion, every heartbeat. Too much, far too much. The bridge required a price, and suddenly she knew what it was, her life. The realization arrived calmly, almost peacefully. This was the sacrifice, not imprisonment, not death in battle, a willing exchange, a guardian's choice. Eira smiled sadly, then collapsed. The world tilted sideways. Sounds became distant. The battlefield faded. Light swallowed everything. And through the light, one voice reached her. Rowan, desperate, terrified, calling her name again and again and again. Then darkness took her. The last thing Eira felt was Rowan's hand in hers, and the terrible certainty that she would never see him again. Chapter 15. The Oath Beyond the Veil. Darkness greeted her first. Not cold darkness, not frightening darkness, peaceful darkness, silent, endless. Eira floated within it, weightless, free from pain, free from fear, free from the burden she had carried for so many years. For a while, she simply drifted. Time lost meaning. Moments blended together. Memories passed like distant stars. Her childhood, her family, Iron Vale, the buried city. Rowan. Always Rowan. The thought of him lingered longer than everything else. Warm, steady, real. Then a voice reached her, faint, broken, desperate. Eira! She frowned. The darkness trembled. Again. Eira! Closer now, more familiar, more painful. A crack of silver light appeared, thin as a thread. Then another. Then hundreds. The darkness began breaking apart. And suddenly Eira understood. She wasn't dead. Not yet. Someone was calling her back. The first thing she felt was pain. The second thing she felt was Rowan's hand. Firm. Warm. Holding hers as though refusing to let go. Eira's eyes opened slowly. Light flooded her vision. Blurred shapes surrounded her. Voices echoed nearby. Someone gasped. Someone laughed. Someone started crying. Then her vision cleared. Rowan sat beside her. His eyes were red, exhausted, relieved, terrified, all at once. For a moment neither spoke. Neither seemed capable of it. Then Rowan laughed, a shaky, disbelieving laugh. You scared me. The simple honesty shattered something inside her. Because Rowan Thorne, the feared Alpha of Iron Vale, looked like a man who had spent days standing at the edge of despair. Eira smiled weakly. You look terrible. A surprised laugh escaped him. Around them, others relaxed. Mara wiped away tears. Lyra looked ready to collapse from relief. Gideon muttered something about stubborn wolves. Aurelia simply smiled. The sight of her mother standing there felt almost unreal. Alive. Still here. After everything. Eira's throat tightened. Home. For the first time in years, the word didn't hurt. Recovery took weeks. The battle beneath Hollow Mountain became legend almost immediately. Stories spread across the north. Stories of silver fire. Stories of ancient cities. Stories of the heir and the king. Most were wrong. A few came close. None understood the full truth. Only those present truly knew what happened. The veil no longer existed. Not in its old form. The prison was gone. The barrier was gone. In its place stood something entirely new. A bridge, a connection, a path between worlds. The creatures from beyond the veil hadn't vanished. Nor had they conquered. Instead, something unprecedented happened. They changed. Freed from the corruption of isolation, many began reclaiming what they once were. Not monsters, not invaders, simply another people, ancient, different, lost. The transition wasn't easy. There were conflicts, arguments, fear, distrust. But there was also hope. And for the first time in thousands of years, both worlds had a chance. 3 months later, Iron Vale looked different. Stronger, healthier, alive. The scars of war remained visible. Yet so did recovery. Children played in rebuilt streets, markets thrived, laughter returned. Life continued. Eira stood atop the northern ridge overlooking the valley. Snow covered the mountains. Winter had returned. Yet somehow everything felt warmer. Footsteps approached. She smiled before turning. Rowan. Of course. The Alpha stopped beside her. Neither rushed to speak. They had become comfortable with silence, comfortable with each other. A rare gift. The wind moved through the pines below. For a while they simply watched the valley. Then Rowan broke the silence. "I have a question." Eira raised an eyebrow. "That sounds dangerous." "It probably is." She smiled. He smiled back. A small thing, a precious thing. The kind she never thought she'd see from him. Then Rowan reached into his coat. Her pulse quickened. Not because of what he held, because of the expression on his face. Vulnerable, uncertain, hopeful. The Alpha of Iron Vale looked more nervous than he had during battle. The realization nearly made her laugh. He opened his hand. A silver pendant rested in his palm. The crescent and flame symbol, moonfire. But beside it stood another symbol, Iron Vale. Together, joined, one piece, one promise, one future. Rowan looked directly at her. His voice remained steady, even when emotion threatened to break through. "I spent most of my life carrying responsibility." A pause, and most of it carrying guilt. The mountains seemed silent around them, listening, waiting. Then Rowan stepped closer. But somewhere along the way, his eyes softened. "You became the best part of my life." Eira felt tears sting her eyes. The words hit harder than any grand declaration ever could, because they were honest, entirely honest. The Alpha swallowed, then asked the question, the one that mattered. "Will you stay? Not will you marry me. Not will you become Luna. Not will you accept a title. Simply, will you stay?" Because Rowan understood something important. Love wasn't possession. Love was choice. Every day, every moment, a choice. Eira smiled through tears, then took his hand, the same hand that had pulled her through darkness, the same hand that had never let go. Yes, the answer came easily. Because for the first time in years, she wasn't running. And for the first time in her life, she knew exactly where she belonged. The ceremony took place during the first snowfall of winter. Not a mating ritual, not an ancient claim. Something new, a tradition created from two worlds instead of one. Wolves gathered from across the north. Pack leaders, healers, historians, guardians, even visitors from beyond the former veil. Together they witnessed something unprecedented, a promise, an oath, not ownership, partnership. When Rowan and Eira stood before the gathered crowd, no prophecy remained, no prison, no destiny, only choice. And that made it infinitely stronger. Their joined oath became known throughout both worlds, the oath beyond the veil, a symbol of unity, a reminder that fear did not need to become hatred. That difference did not require division, that love could rebuild what centuries of conflict had broken. Years later, stories would still be told, stories of the moonfire heir, stories of the Alpha King, stories of the battle beneath Hollow Mountain. Most would focus on the war, the magic, the sacrifice. But the truth was simpler. The world changed because two wounded people chose trust instead of fear, connection instead of isolation, love instead of surrender. And in the end, that choice proved stronger than any prophecy. Final twist. Decades later, while restoring deeper sections of the buried city, Lyra discovered one final hidden chamber. Inside rested a sealed record written by the Hollow King himself. A record untouched for thousands of years. Its final passage revealed the greatest secret of all. The Hollow King had never predicted Eira and Rowan, never planned them, never created the bridge. The solution that saved both worlds had been entirely unexpected. The ancient king's final words were carved into silver stone. The future remains unwritten. That is why hope exists. And for Eira Voss and Rowan Thorne, hope became the legacy that outlived them both.